It's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox Johnson. Mr. Jacobson.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Ms. Marlin.
Here.
Mr. Roberts.
Here.
Mr. Smythe.
Here.
Ms. Stevenson.
Present.
Mayor Pressing.
Here.
Are there any additions to the agenda and/or a staff report? Tom Carino? Is this going to be the market at the square? Okay.
Yes. This has been a little bit of a year of transition for the market, including a new Market at the Square director, Natalie Kenny Marquez. I'd like to say that Natalie has done an excellent job with everything we've asked of her, from Market at the Square to marketing. And so I'd like to introduce Natalie, who's going to give the annual market report.
Thanks, Natalie. Go ahead.
Sure. Good evening. I'm happy to be here tonight to talk to you about Urbana's Market at the Square. Right now we're currently gearing up to the start of the 34th season of the market, which is a mere 99 days away, in case you were wondering. But tonight I'd like to recap the 2012 season, what went well, what we can improve upon this year and in the future. I'm going to focus partially on some statistics and market numbers, but I'd mostly like to focus on the market itself, the programming, the committed participants, and our plans for this season. There are a couple of farmers market trends worth noting. These are national, statewide, and local trends that demonstrate the increasingly important roles market play in their communities. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, there were 7,864 farmers markets listed in their National Farmers Market Directory, and this is a 9.6% increase from 2011 and a nearly 40% increase over the past 10 years. So it's clear that the popularity of markets nationally and in our state continues to grow. On a local level, we continue to grow here in Urbana as well. We saw a slight increase in the number of registered vendors at the market this season. Of the 152 registered vendors, 36% were new and had never participated in our market before 2012. So weekly vendor attendance at the market averaged about 71 vendors per weekend in 2012, and this is up from 66 vendors in 2011. And just a fun note, the market dates with the highest vendor attendance were June 23rd and July 14th, and if you remember, those were extremely hot months of the summer. So it just goes to show that we have a very committed audience at the market, and as indicated in the annual report, revenue for vendors was up due in large part to the increase in participating vendors. The number of registered community groups and performers was it held pretty steady in 2012. There was a little bit of dip in participation, but during the market's peak season, the community group row was completely sold out with all 27 spaces filled. Performers are still a popular component of the market. Although performers don't have to pay a fee to participate, they are required to follow specific guidelines and to fill out an application and keep that on hand with us. So moving on to people, as shown in the photo. The main event here is the crack truck, but in the background you can see patrons visiting the community group booths and socializing in front of other mobile food vendors. According to staff counts, estimated patron attendance was slightly decreased from 2012, with an estimated total of 132,300 visitors during the market season. So if we average that across 27 weeks, we drew an estimated 4,900 patrons per weekend. For 2013, we plan to look at new and additional methods of tracking attendance to see if this small decline from the previous years was a trend or just a single year anomaly. And we're hoping that increased marketing and promotions this year will assist in boosting attendance at the market. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a few slides. So for our vendors, pictured here are a few vendors that make the market the wonderful market that it is. As you know, Urbana's Market at the Square is a producer-only market, and that means that participants must grow or create their products themselves within the state of Illinois. Similar to previous years, roughly half of the participating vendors were from the Urbana-Champaign area, and the remaining participants originated from throughout the state of Illinois. And in the annual report is a link to a Google map where you can see plotted on the map where all of our vendors originate from in Illinois. It's pretty interesting. Vendors are separated into two main categories: growers, producers, and non-growers. There were 41 grower produce vendor participants this past year, and what that includes is fresh fruit and vegetable producers, meat, dairy, honey producers, fresh flower producers, and live plant producers. The non-growers are subcategorized as prepared food vendors and art and craft vendors. There were 27 prepared food vendors last year, and that includes bakers, candy makers, ice cream vendors, and other prepared food designed to be consumed on and off-site. And art and craft vendors accounted for 84 of the participants last year, and this category includes artisans, crafters who produce items like photography and clothing, woodworking, pottery, furniture, soaps, and more. Community groups are a valuable resource for the Urbana-Champaign community, both for the groups publicizing their efforts and for the patrons who are looking for ways to contribute, volunteer, or engage in the community. Pictured here are, let's see, a fencing demonstration from a local fencing organization, and we've got ChambanaMoms.com and the Great American Bake Sale. So like I noted in previous slide, we've had this past year 81 different community groups participated in the market. Performers are still a very popular component of the market experience. Performers ranged in genre from folk and bluegrass to indie rock acts to harp to balloon sculpture and face painting and traditional busking or street performances. We had a total of 44 performers registered this past year. We continue to work really hard to bring the market's identity to the public in a variety of ways, both traditional and not so traditional. We make sure that all the market's materials are consistent in terms of font use and the market's mark, or in this case, the members of the chicken family. And we try to add color and vibrancy and often a little bit of humor to all of the market's materials. We continued to use traditional marketing tools this past year like print, radio, television, and other forms of advertising. Social media, however, is the most convenient and easiest for us to update on a regular basis. It's an important aspect of the market's marketing and promotion efforts, and just before the meeting I checked, and we have 4,805 likes on our Facebook page for the market and 1,845 followers on Twitter. So to help boost those numbers over the past few months, we've started a weekly vendor spotlight. So if you follow us on social media, you'll see that we spotlight a vendor each week, and we put that on our Facebook and Twitter, and it helps build anticipation for the upcoming market season and show off all of our awesome vendors. Now I'll talk a little bit about the programming that we continued at the market this past year. Sprouts at the Market is free kids programming. It's focused on nutrition and farm linkage for young kids approximately 3 to 8 years of age. The programming continued to be a popular event, averaging about 70 known participants per event, and I say that because some kids participate without signing in, and that's just fine too. We're currently working with our Sprouts coordinator, Jen Hewitt, who is a local registered dietitian who helps us finalize our schedule and put the Sprouts events together. And we're again planning to offer 6 events in 2013. Let's see. The Public Arts Program held 6 very successful workshops at the market this past year. They were all very well attended by patrons of all ages. There was about 616 participants total, which attended the 6 events. The performance at the market component was new in 2012, and it showcased a variety of musicians. Performances by Ryan Groff of Elsinore and the Torinos were the most popular performances during the market, and there was even an impromptu square dance breaking out during the Torinos performance, so that was a lot of fun. And I have to add a special thank you to the Public Arts Coordinator, Christina McClellan, for all of her hard work planning and carrying out those events at the market. The market works with a variety of organizations in some capacity on other types of programming or activities. For example, the Urbana Free Library, the Urbana Business Association, and U-Cycle provide information and activities for patrons of all ages. Art Mart allows the Sprouts programming to use their commercial kitchen to prep, wash, cut produce for sampling during Sprouts events. And the Eastern Illinois Food Bank picks up excess produce through our Farm to Food Bank initiative. And on a side note, this past year, 13,569 pounds of produce were donated to the food bank by participating vendors, who then distribute it to their agencies and programs for distribution to their clients. So that was a very impressive number. We're working on strengthening and expanding our partnerships this coming year in 2013 in hopes that we can better work together to spread the word about all the great things happening at the market each week. 2012 marked the third year the market has accepted credit, debit, and link cards on behalf of market vendors. SNAP stands for the federal government's Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and LINK is the name of the program in Illinois. In 2011, the market was awarded grant funds by Link Up, and that's a program run by Experimental Station in Chicago, and it's funded by the Wholesome Wave Foundation in Connecticut. The funds were designed to double the value of Link token purchases up to $20. And the double value program came later in the 2011 market season, which left some grant funds unused, and luckily we're able to carry over those funds and apply them to the 2012 season. And then in 2012, the market was awarded with additional double value program funding, and this amount helped the market continue to double the value of Link token purchases through August. And it was August because that's when we exhausted those grant funds. We're currently in the process of applying for double value funding for 2013, so I'll be sure to keep you posted on that. Because of the Link Up grant funding to match Link token purchases up to $20, like I said, 6,155 additional Link tokens were distributed to patrons and circulated into the market at no cost to the patrons, for a grand total of $17,869 in Link tokens being sold and distributed. This was up significantly from the previous year. In terms of credit debit tokens, the market sold $72,552 in credit debit tokens during this 2012 season, but the credit debit token program is not without cost and significant administrative time. There are equipment rental fees, transaction fees, and other service charges, and we are currently working to phase out the credit debit token system. The credit debit tokens consume hours of weekly admin time to process, print and mail checks to vendors, and to reconcile these transactions, which is necessary for the control and the security of the token system. Phasing out the credit debit token program is scheduled to begin with this season, but will not affect the Link token program whatsoever. The market greatly values the opportunity to offer this service to our Link customers, and our customers will experience no changes to our Link or to the use of Link tokens. In addition, we are working closely with the Illinois Department of Human Services to explore an initiative that offers Illinois farmers markets a free wireless point-of-sale system that processes only Link transactions, and this free state-issued system does not accept credit debit cards. We're also exploring ways for more market vendors to accept credit debit cards directly at their booths at the market. Looking forward to the future, opening day for the 34th season of the market at the Square is May 4th, so put that on your calendars. The market, some projects for this upcoming season. The Market at the Square Advisory Board is currently being established and scheduled to have quarterly meetings, with the initial meeting to occur sometime prior to the start of the 2013 season. We're currently working on some new, unique advertising opportunities that I'm hoping will reach a broader and more diverse audience. We're still in the planning phase of this, but I'm sure you'll hear more about this if you follow us on social media. And we'll be initiating an email newsletter this season called Market Mail, so be sure to subscribe. That will be delivered to subscriber emails weekly during the market season and monthly during the market's off season, and it will kind of offer a what to expect at the market this weekend and offer links to market programming information and an interactive map, which is my next point. We're initiating a web-based market management system. It's really exciting, at least to me anyways. It will allow for more efficient day-to-day market administration through electronic vendor and community group applications and improved payment and participant attendance tracking. The system will also make the market map electronic, interactive, and accessible from the market's website. The map will be a link from the market's webpage and will allow patrons the ability to click on vendor spaces to find vendor information, photos of products, learn what each vendor has for sale during a specific weekend, view vendor contact information, and just so much more. I think it will also help promote the community groups that attend the market, making their info more prominent and readily available. Locally, the market in downtown Bloomington uses the same system as well as many other markets across the country. There is an annual $15 application fee for each participant to cover the cost of the program, but this fee is required by the system. It's consistent nationwide with markets that use this same type of program. And I'd love to show you just really quick what it looks like. We're going to go to Portland's market. They also use this. And for example, say you want to come to the market and buy kale. Oop, wrong place to put it. Don't put it in there. Put it here. Kale. And you click enter, and it will pull up all of the vendors at the market that sell kale, their contact information, what days they're going to be at the market, and where the dates are highlighted. If you click on that, it will go to the map and show you exactly where they're located. So I think it's going to be very helpful for people that like to plan ahead and want to know where to go and what's in season. I checked, the links aren't quite ready yet because, like us, many markets are in their application phase right now, so the maps aren't quite populated yet, but keep an eye out for that. Oop, come back here. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to especially thank the Finance Department and Public Works Department who were patient with me last season as I transitioned into this position. And Lisa Braultz, the previous market director, left me with some big shoes to fill, so I'm really looking forward to this season, and I'm happy to take questions if anyone has any.
Dennis?
Yeah. Of course, every time we learn about the market, it's what a success story. It's been growing and becoming much more serviceable to the community. I wanted to just ask one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, over the last year, a new community script or money has been created called UC Smiles.
Yes.
It's still being discovered, I think, by people in the community, and some stores offer these, and they provide in-house discounts. I know that you've said that the token system for debit and credit is passing out, and the link cards are probably what you're going to be doing. I wonder if you've had a presentation or talked to the creators and the promoters of UC Smiles, and I wonder if you've thought about making acceptance of the new script for the downtown or Urbana-Champaign area available.
Yeah, I have met with the representatives from UC Smiles, and I actually know of a couple of vendors at the market towards the end of this past season who were accepting UC Smiles, but I think that's something that vendors are going to do on a case-by-case basis if that's something that they'd like to accept. But I know, in fact, there are at least 2 that are accepting them at the market currently.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Diane?
Just had several questions.
Sure.
First of all, thank you for an excellent report and what looks to be a seamless transition. So
I hope
congratulations
so.
on
Thank
that.
you.
First question is, I'm always curious about the economic impact of the market, and the reports always say it's very difficult to measure, and then we kind of focus on trying to count numbers of people, which, given the porous boundaries of the market, I'm not sure how anyone ever can do that accurately, but I'm glad you're trying. But my question is it possible to get an idea of sales volume, or like how much total money is changing hands on any given Saturday? I think that would, I think it has a tremendous impact on our overall economic
Sure.
picture.
I know that there are markets across the nation that do require that information from their vendors, but that's something that we don't. With this new system that we're initiating, this electronic market management system, there is the possibility to track that. So that's something that we can take into consideration, or at least have a better estimate than in years
I
past.
would love to, I mean, I wouldn't expect that we would, be sharing individual sales information from a vendor, but an overall total would be excellent
Mhm.
information to have.
Yep, that's definitely something we can do with this new system, so
Great.
I'll look further into that for this season.
And will we get the Link Up grant again this year? Do you know?
I dearly hope so. The application is on my desk, and that's what I'm working on tomorrow. So I'm not sure when they will release who is receiving and what amount, but I'll be sure to let you know as soon as I find out.
Okay. And from 2010 to 2011, the expenses made a big jump for the market from 41,000 to something like 71.
Right.
And I know part of that was due to infrastructure improvements.
Yes, that was a significant portion of it.
But they stayed up. So what, from 2011 to 2012, is that the personnel addition?
There was some addition in personnel and staff time and administration and covering the cost of just the administration of the token system, accounting and finance, things like that. But there was extra staff person at least involved in that.
So if we're not doing the debit credit tokens again, will our expenses related to that go down, do you think?
Possibly.
Okay.
Mhm. Tom?
Tom Carino.
Oh,
I can try to answer that question too. You mentioned some infrastructure improvements, electrical infrastructure. Because the market's fund balance could handle that, it was considered an operating expense as opposed to something that we depreciated over time. So that was a one-time, one-hit expense for infrastructure. And then also there is a one-time per year administrative fee. And that fee is generally calculated by the comptroller, and it's calculated based on he calculates it based on what he feels the market can support, and that I will say generally that administrative charge has gone up, not down, but with the change of administrative functions, we can work with the finance department to figure that out. But the trend for that administrative charge has been up and not down.
it always goes up. My last question is, in your discussion of how to address the possibly decrease in attendance, or to at least boost attendance,
Mhm.
it looked like it was pretty much focused on marketing and programming, but not a lot of focus on looking at the vendor mix, or figuring out if the vendors there are serving the needs of the customers, or if we want more food, or what. Are you going to also be looking at that aspect of it?
Definitely. I have 2 vendor meetings planned in March to talk to the vendors about this past season, to motivate them a little bit, to work with them about marketing their own products and making them look nice to the patrons, and working with this system to really market themselves. I also plan to send out a press release about the announcement of our application being live this Friday, and send that to some local newspapers outside of the Champaign-Urbana area to see if there might be any potential vendors interested in attending the market that may have never sold at the market before. So those are a couple of ways that we're working towards boosting the vendors.
Let's just hope for a cooler summer.
Yeah.
And wetter.
Maybe not quite as hot.
Anybody else? I have something. So you said that we're going to phase out the credit debit,
Mhm.
and you explained why. I'm looking at the numbers here of $65,935, and it was said that it was $1,155 in unrecovered costs. And then later on in the report, I read where we're doing the web-based market management system at a cost of $15 to the vendors. Is that correct?
Yes, as an application fee.
Is there a reason why we couldn't why we couldn't give the vendors the option of using the credit debit system and add a fee so that we can recover that cost?
There is a fee to use the credit debit system as a patron. When you swipe your card, there's a $1 fee added to it to try to cover the cost of the program. It's the program management fee. But just the system alone, the point of sale system, the cost of renting it, that we can't make up the fee for. Then there's the administrative costs that go along with it as well. There are vendors that are currently using their own point of sale system at their booths, or they're using Square technology or other types of means to accept credit debit themselves in their booths, and that's something I'm going to work with vendors who are interested in using that and do some training on that as well.
And I guess at the end of the day, $65,000 is a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And if it means a loss of that much in sales because people don't go to the ATM or they don't have cash because they're waiting for a week to get paid.
Right.
And so they're putting it on their credit card. Not only is it a loss for the patrons, but it is also a loss for the vendors. So
Right.
I think if the option for the vendors is available, they need to be made aware of it.
Definitely.
That there are tools that they can use themselves as vendors so
Yes.
that they can keep their sales up.
I totally agree, and I think that using this new type of technology, which is becoming very popular at farmers markets across the country, I think it's going to be nice for the vendors because then they can accept credit debit not only at the market but in other sales that they might do. And there's an ATM that's at the entrance of the market as well, and combined, I think that will hopefully be helpful. Also, in the report, I noted that there's usually, on average, at the most, maybe like 80 transactions for credit debit any weekend. And we have about 4,900 people that we estimate be at the market. I'm hoping that it's a small part of the population at the market that uses credit debit. But now that we have these other options available for the vendors, they'll continue to be able to use their credit debit cards.
All right. Sounds good. Anything else for Tom or Natalie? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Were there any other additions to the agenda and/or staff report? Okay. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, which were January 14th.
So moved.
Second.
Charlie?
There's some corrections that need to be made. Others present, Tom Burns' last name is misspelled under others present in section 4 under public input. Missing an M has been substituted for an RN in there. On page 3, the update, the final paragraph, Mr. Smythe made a second motion to send this item to council with a recommendation for approval not to charge residential lots any additional fee. That motion failed.
That's right.
So those are the corrections that I've noted.
Go ahead, Diane.
On page 4, item 9, motion to drop consideration of the roundabout at Race and Windsor. It should read, Ms. Marlin made a motion to table indefinitely consideration of roundabout at Race and Windsor. Direct staff to table indefinitely any plans for additional study of a road diet on Windsor Road.
All right. Are there any other corrections to the minutes?
Yeah, actually, and there's a
Charlie?
grammatical typo in the second to last paragraph on page 3. It should be made a motion to send this item as it stands to council. The S is in the wrong place.
Okay. Diane and Dennis? Oh, Robert?
Robert Lewis.
Do you accept the friendly amendment?
Yes.
As friendly?
Yes.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Next, I have public input, and these cards don't indicate if you wanted to speak at the time of the agenda item or now. So I'm just going to assume that you want to speak now. We've got a lot of cards here, and so I'm going to ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and do your best to not repeat what the previous, if it's about the same topic, not to repeat what the previous speaker has said. I'm not saying you can't, I'm just saying to do your best. First, I have Julie Pride. And if you state your name and address, and again, try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Yes.
Hi. My name is Julie Pride. I'm the administrator of Champaign-Urbana Public Health District, and I am here as the lead agent. Champaign-Urbana Public Health District is the lead agent for the We Choose Health grant, which is a community transformation grant of about $800,000 we got for the community. And I'm going to speak to just 3 things that shows that we are supportive of your plans to demolish the condemned townhomes as a public safety hazard, the development of the multi-use pathway connecting neighborhoods, residents, businesses with community resources, and funding of street lights in North Urbana. CU Public Health District seeks ways to change the environment so people are free to live active, healthy lives and make healthy choices. It's more than just a beautification of a neighborhood. These sustainable efforts are great ways to nudge people towards healthier behaviors. These sustainable efforts are ways to get people healthy who want to choose health. When you feel safe, walking outside in physical activity is less of a challenge. And I just wanted to use a real brief example. I live in Champaign, but I live on Johnston Park. And a few years ago, I just woke up one day and the Park District had put a sidewalk around this park. Since we've lived there, there was never anyone in the park. There was kind of some vandalism and a few other things going on over there. The sidewalk was put around the park, and from that moment on, people started walking in that community, and kids started playing on the playground equipment that had always been there, and families started using the park. And I think that the more people that, the more activities you have in an area, the better. And you've already got some great things going on over there in the Learman neighborhood, so I just think this would be an additional plus. So I just wanted to come up here and tell you that CU Public Health District supports all the great things you're doing.
Thank you. Are
Thank
there
you.
any comments or questions for Julie? Thank you very much. Next, I have Rex Bradfield.
I'm Rex Bradfield. I live in Urbana on Pond Street, and I wanted to talk to you very briefly about the issues with the laterals on the sewers. I found this in a paper, and I don't think we need to have this kind of press. It's not our paper, but I think I know the answer to this. But my statement is that I had a problem with my sanitary sewer lines at my house. And when I fixed it, what I did was I called out a local sanitary contractor, had the pipe broken into, and when the pipe is broken into, the replacement pipe, I had them put in a clean out. What they did when they broke into the pipe was they used a snake with a cutting tool on it that cut all the roots out of it. My pipe was completely blocked, and it was just absolutely wouldn't work. They cut that out, and the pipe started to flow, and then I had to put in, at that time, that was about 12 years ago or so, and I was using copper sulfate. It worked pretty good. The problem was, I've got a confession to make, it didn't work when the owner didn't put the stuff in there. And so if you fall asleep putting that stuff in there, the roots will grow back. But when you put it in there, it would last for 3 or 4 years, that pipe would be clean. They have stuff now that I brought you a couple of things, and there's nothing about the name, but it's called Rex Bacti, and this is actually a herbicide. It's not a caustic substance. It's something that's safe for the sewer systems, and this stuff works great. I mean, it's kept them out of there for 5 years. The cost of all that was only about $500, including the clean out. The clean out allows whoever owns the property, or if the city's going to get involved in it, it allows you an access also to sleeve the pipe if you need to. But this stuff now that I put in there, it's got some type of film that it puts in there that the roots don't come back.
You
They
have
don't
1 minute,
come
Mr.
back at all.
Bradfield.
Yeah, I'll be done in just that time. So I'd be happy to leave this for you. It seems to me like 5 years or so would give you a way of helping these people with this, and maybe make some financial planning that you do something in 5 years or so. But this does not involve tearing up streets or anything, and it worked great for me. So it was really cheap. $500 is not much at all, and I mean, mine were completely plugged up.
All right.
Who
Are
do I
there,
give this to? Phyllis?
yeah.
Right.
Are there any comments or questions for Rex? Charlie and then Eric?
Yeah, I have to do the same thing, but I have to do it annually. I'm curious about what you use instead of what I do. I use Root X. I also have a message from Brandon Bowersox that I wanted to relay. So, yeah, when I get a chance.
For me?
No, a separate
okay.
message here.
Yes.
Yeah.
What did you use?
Root X is what I use, and it's an annual application.
Yeah.
But it's a film,
and
too.
It's. I mean, gosh, they got stuff out on the market where some of it's semi-annual, annual, but this stuff here really works great, and it's a herbicide, and and the other thing
it keeps
is
the roots.
Yeah, when you put that in, they changed the way you do it, that you actually put this stuff in first, and it helps the machine that cuts that stuff out. It's kind of a lubricant for it, doesn't damage the pipe, and it also seals the pipe up. It's clever stuff.
Eric?
Great.
Yeah, no, I appreciate having our attention drawn to this, and I think that, for a long time in our household drains, we've used a bacterial and enzyme solution as opposed to caustic stuff, and I think this is in the same class, and I think it's a really good idea for us to be moving in that direction. And
Well,
so
the
thank you
thing
for
that I wanted to
suggestion.
point out is that they got to break into the pipe anyway and
Right.
have them put the clean out back in, because that gives you a way of cleaning it out really cheap. If you have to come back, what costs $500 for the clean out and all the stuff the first time, the next time it only costs like $150. That's really cheap.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Rex.
Thanks for your help.
Heather, if I could break
Yeah.
in here. Brandon Bowersox just texted me. He said, my plane was canceled. I'm in a rental car and will be late to the meeting. Please tell everyone I hope to arrive later.
Okay.
I assume that because of the fog, his plane didn't make it in.
Oh,
So,
it's no
He's
fun
on
to
his way.
drive. No fun
hope
to
he
drive
can-
in.
Yeah, it's just not an easy drive, yeah.
No. Bill Brown? Again, your name and address, and if you can limit your comments to 3 minutes, that'd be super.
I'm Bill Brown, 304 West Nevada Street, and I'm here to support three ordinances you have concerning budget amendments and the multi-use path. First of all, I did watch the video of the community development meeting, and there seemed to be some confusion about where the path was. So I made a few slides to let people know where it was. It was actually on the bicycle master plan in 2008 that the council approved, but this is a different council now, so maybe some of you haven't seen it before. So the path is where the red circle is there. It's not on Philo Road. It's several blocks off. It crosses the old railroad right-of-way. The spur that came up from Sydney went to Urbana Crossing, where Schnucks is now. It's the only place you can get across there that isn't private property. There's another dirt path up near Philo Road, up farther north, that crosses a billboard owned property and Ameren owned property. And then there's a private drive that comes down here that people can take a shortcut to knock off that final corner. But that's about it. There's really no place to get across that whole railroad line. It's 0.7 miles, almost 3,700 feet from there to there. This is highlighted as the community development block group that is in it's the census block group that's in the community development block grant that some of this money is coming from. That's an aerial view of the path as it was a couple years ago. It's a dirt path. It's often muddy and rutty. Occasionally accumulates some discarded things, and car seats.
You have
This-
1 minute, Mr. Brown.
Better hurry up. Okay, this is the parcel map. So it does show that the right-of-way for Adams Street, which was apparently planned at one point to go clear across, never did. And when the railroad vacated, they also gave two lots there. So the city does own this whole section here. There's no purchase. It's in the bicycle master plan from 2008. This is the designs that the staff did. I'm not sure what, I think it was this past year, I'm not sure when. And that's a close-up view of the path of their designs. It shows it does connect to the sidewalks. It's a multi-use path, so it's also in the bicycle plan. But we, at the neighborhood group, assume that the major use for it will be walking. And this is why it does shorten your path by about 1/4 mile to get from one side to the other. From the central part of this neighborhood down to the county market becomes a 1 mile walk instead of 1.25 miles. That's it. Thanks.
Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Brown? Thank you. Nancy Barrett?
My name is Nancy Barrett, and I live at 1608 Adams Street in Urbana. And I'm here to speak in favor of the Lenore Adams Fairlawn Walkway project. And here's a little bit more of the history. For at least 30 years, there has been a vacant lot in the intersection of Adams Street and Fairlawn Avenue in the AmVets 2 subdivision. It has become a pedestrian shortcut for residents of the Learman neighborhood just to our north to access shops and transportation in the Sunnycrest area. Years of foot, bike, and stroller traffic have resulted in deep ruts, making the path muddy and hard to navigate in bad weather. On December 1st, 2011, 16 of my neighbors met with city staff from Community Development and Public Works to discuss options for the lot. We decided at that meeting that a wide concrete path with lighting and some landscaping would be the best option. The path would provide easy access to Philo Road for pedestrians and bike riders and strollers. The addition of streetlights would increase safety for the Learman AmVets neighborhoods since this area is currently very dark. On December 6th, 2012, a little over a year after that first meeting, we had an update on the planning progress. 13 residents from AmVets 2 and the Learman neighborhoods met with Libby Tyler from Community Development and Brad Bennett from the Engineering Department. They showed us the plan that you saw earlier, which consisted of a beautiful 8-foot wide concrete pedestrian and bike pathway, S-curve in design to slow down bike speed, and connecting the existing Lenore sidewalk to Fairlawn Avenue. It was ADA compliant with solar-powered LED lighting, the first of its kind in Urbana. Landscaping would consist of a hardy 5-foot turf grass on each side of the path and low-grade prairie mix on each side of the turf, with 8,000 prairie plants planned.
You have 1 minute, Ms. Barrett.
Construction was to start in the spring of this year. The city was to put in 2 garbage cans, one in each end of the path. Since there are no funds for ongoing maintenance, AmVets and Learman neighbors will pick up trash along the path, and AmVets neighbors agreed to shovel snow from the walk in the winter. We all left that meeting very excited about the project because it seems to provide a very good option for a long-standing neighborhood eyesore while providing Learman neighbors with a safe and attractive pathway at a reasonable cost. We hope that the city will go forward with this project as planned. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nancy. Are there any comments or questions for Nancy? Thanks, Nancy. Robin Arbiter. I don't want to mess up. Did I say it?
Perfect.
Oh, wow. She doesn't have her motorized. Yeah.
Option.
Good evening.
Hi.
My name is Robin Arbiter. I live at 1511 Hunter Street in Urbana. I am here to reaffirm the position of the Learman Neighborhood Action Committee on a few key projects. For a year, we've supported the development of the multi-use pathway at Fairlawn and Lenore and the funding of streetlights in North Urbana, and since its condemnation, the demolition of Urbana townhomes in as expedient a manner as possible. I'm not going to go over what other people have said about the pathway because it speaks for what people have said covers what I would say. I will say it's a vital link for people in the neighborhood to get to not just jobs, but medicine, entertainment, other buses, and saving almost a mile out of your way is significant, especially when you're on foot or biking in this kind of weather. And I also wanted to add to that an accessible and formal route out of the neighborhood is really important for wheelchair and scooter users, and there are no currently accessible unsanctioned routes. Like I have to drive on a neighbor's sidewalk to get into the path as it is. So I won't speak about that much further, but I will say regarding the streetlights in North Urbana that a very compassionate and timely decision was made last year to put some money meant for North Urbana street lighting into the Learman neighborhood instead. And the decision was deemed critical because of the dangers posed by the lack of lighting on blocks where we were having serious fights. The decision moved forward went so from the beginning with the understanding that North Urbana would receive the lighting that had been planned for it in the next fiscal year. And the beauty of the planning that the staff had done was that there wouldn't be a significant delay to North Urbana's needs being met. LNEC would not have advocated for its 2 new streetlights, which we greatly appreciate, to come at the cost of another neighborhood's needs
1 minute, Ms.
not being
Arbiter.
met. Thank you. And finally, it's been a year since we started talking about the issue with Urbana townhomes. The main issue there is that fences that are up now are not going to prevent a tragedy on the site. Should it continue to prove attractive to childish curiosity, adult criminality, or a person's desperate need for shelter. We are worried about the safety of our neighbors and our police on the site, and Lizzie Carter brought before you last August a petition with 300 signatures on it saying that neighbors want those buildings down. They're very concerned about their safety. So I hope you'll move forward on all 3 of these issues positively, and I also wanted to just acknowledge that a number of neighbors from Learman are with us here tonight. Some aren't speaking, but I want to acknowledge Ms. Carter, Ms. Brown, and Mr. Askins, who are just great role models and service providers in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Are there any comments or questions for Robin? Thanks for coming. Bernadine Stake.
Well, I am Bernadine Stake, and I live at 304 West Iowa in Urbana. And I thought we had taxes for the city to take care of the sanitary sewers. I don't understand why people are having to pay a lot for their sewers. Is there something?
Well, we number 5 is the discussion for sanitary sewer lateral reimbursement program for the Dr. Ellis subdivision, sanitary sewer concerns, and I'm sure that your question will be addressed by Bill in a little bit.
A little later? Okay, thank you.
As soon as I get through the stack of cards, and because that's the first agenda item after public input. So
okay, thank
we'll
you.
get to it soon. Susan Taylor.
I'm Susan Taylor, 606 West Michigan in Urbana, and like Bernadine, I think my question will probably be answered on the first. But my question is a sort of historical perspective. I believe that 606 West Michigan is in the Busey subdivision. I don't think many of us know what subdivision we're in. I'm a little vague on it. But I just wondered how it happens that this particular configuration of both sides of the street with the Dr. Ellis subdivision has come about, and if it has not been sort of an error when it came about in the first place that has put the residents in a difficult position. I may be wrong, but that's the way it looks. So I just wanted to put that into the fire. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions for Susan or comments? Charlie?
No, I'm just wondering if it might be beneficial to have to separate out all the statements on Ellis subdivision and the sewer laterals to go right after a staff presentation.
Kind of thought, but people
yeah.
didn't write down what they were talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah. So there might be something, that, yeah.
So-
Some people need to get going, so.
I know. I'm trying to get through these
Yeah.
as quick as I can. So, Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood.
I would like to speak during the time of the presentation, and I would like to have my 5 minutes.
Well, I'll put your card aside, and as far as the 5 minutes, again, we're asking people to limit their comments to 3 minutes because of the number of cards that I have and the number of people that are here to speak about several different issues. So that's why we've asked for the 3 minutes rather than 5 tonight. I have Bishop King James Underwood.
I would like to speak after we hear.
Okay. Carol Ammons.
Good evening. I appreciate, first and foremost, I appreciate the work of Dr. Evelyn Underwood and Bishop King James Underwood on this issue, because one thing that often doesn't happen is people don't come to these meetings because usually they don't see how they fit into them, and this is a really serious issue that affects them directly. One thing I want to address is, and I've been on boards and I understand this process, boards and committees, the government entity tends to give more time to staff reports than may be necessary, but less time to public input that is quite necessary. And I'm really concerned about that, have always been concerned about that on the county level as well as the city. And so if we have, unfortunately, situations like this, and I'll be there, so I understand time, but if we have situations like this, to deny the full access to the government body is really flies in the face of the democratic process. And I wanted to share that before I start. The second thing is, when I first got the email on the Ellis subdivision, I did pose a couple questions because I don't know the history, the time frame for which it is existing, and I hope that this city planner has done all of the research. The reason why this needs to go back is because a few years back, CU Citizens for Peace and Justice, which I am a volunteer activist with, we worked on an issue around the toxic site in Champaign. And the reason why we worked on that issue is because residents came to us and said, there's a toxic site in Champaign that we are concerned about its impact on the community. Now, that's a community, primarily people of color. That's a community that's been somewhat ignored by economic development. And this site was an eyesore and possibly a public health risk. And so our activists got together and started working on that issue.
You have 1 minute, Ms. Ammons.
Thank you. The issue itself, again, really brought to the surface the negligence of Ameren and the city of Champaign on the toxic site and redressing it. Now, I say that because Dr. Ellis subdivision is an old subdivision. And at the time that that subdivision was put in, the question is this: how much of that was standard practice, and how much was it designed based on neighborhood, designed based on the climate of the time? That cannot be ignored in dealing with Dr. Ellis subdivision. You can't just use current policy to seemingly redress a blanket issue that crosses the city of Urbana without looking at time frame, impact, and history on that community. And so when you look at poor people, elderly people, which is filling this chamber, who don't have the resources necessarily to rebuild, tear up streets, and do the thing that is being asked according to the later ordinance of 2007, you really are developing a disparity yourself. I think you need to look a little bit further back to see how much of this might have been the time that unfortunately is bearing down on this current council and might bear down on the next council to come, but needs to be redressed in light of time. And I'd like to just leave it at that, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Carol. Are there any comments or questions for Carol at this time? Thank you, Carol. I have Shirley. What do you think that is? Shirley Brown? Shirley Brown? Couldn't tell if it was Braun or Brown, so sorry.
Good evening. I just wanted to state that I was in support of the upgrade in my neighborhood. I really didn't want to talk.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lizzie Carter?
Hi. Okay, what am I supposed to do?
If you give us your name and your address and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes, that'd be great.
My name is Lizzie Carter. I live at 912 South Learman Avenue. I live across the street from Woodstone Apartments. I want to say to City Council, thank you. Thank you and God bless you. I really thank you. I'm in support of the walks. I'm in support of the children. I'm here for just what it is. The kids are going around the corner instead of going down the street like they should. They're going across the street to stores they shouldn't go to, you know. And I think it'll be a beneficial to Learman Avenue, beneficial to the children, beneficial to people on public aid that's getting assistance. I think it'll be success for these kids to stop going to Phillips 66, Home Run, which is another whatever it is now. I think that the children and myself don't need gas stations in our neighborhood like we have. I think we should have, instead of cut a hole in the fence, I think it should be a sidewalk. They go to the store, like to the Dollar General store. We have to go all the way around to get to the store to spend our food stamps. I think it's ridiculous. Children are buying food that they shouldn't buy, unhealthy, very unhealthy for them. Potato chips, cookies, candy, whatever. I'd rather you go to the dollar store, you at least get $1 worth. I am very, very, very proud of City Council. I'm not saying it because I'm in a band, not saying it because of the, I don't care. I just thank you for the change. I'm looking for a success. I'm not going to leave. I was going to leave. I'm waiting on the
You have
future.
1 minute, Ms. Carter.
Okay, but I want to see the future. I'm waiting on the future. I'm the garden coordinator, and I think they should eat more healthy than what they do. And I think if they go around, not the block, but go around. I live on Learman Avenue. I live there, and I have to go by the office, through the fence where they have cut a hole at.
Mm-hmm.
I'm scared there's maybe a possum, a coon, or, you know, I don't want to take a knife because I may go to jail or whatever, but I'm like, you know, then I go down this hill. I done fell a few times down this hill. Muddy, slippery, it's muddy. It's not cool, you know, and then the kids are climbing the fences, but they at least go get some bread that's not $3. Thank you.
Thanks, Lizzie.
You're welcome.
Next, I have Tommy Askins. And again, if you can state your name, your address, and limit your comments to 3
My name
minutes.
is Tommy Askins. I said 1210 Learman. I really didn't want to speak today, but my main concern over there is with the kids. And every day after school, I bring the kids by my house. I have homework with them. I have snacks with them. And they just trying to keep them off the street. It's not the bad neighborhood that like everybody think it is. It's just that we need to try to make the parents more accountable for their kids. And I think it'd be a great neighborhood if that would happen. So I don't know what else to say. But I'm glad that y'all had me up here.
Thanks. Are there any comments or questions for Tommy? Thanks for coming. Katie Henry? Katie Henry? Is Katie Henry still here? Okay. She is in support of the sanitary district sewer issue for the Dr. Ellis subdivision. Donna McKinley?
My name is Donna McKinley, and I live at 1302 West Eureka Street. I live at the Dr. Ellis subdivision, and I've been living there a long time. And I received a flyer from the neighborhood talking about the lateral in the sewage system and the reimbursement program, and that's why I'm here, so we can get some answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Shirley Hersey?
My name is Shirley Hersey. I live at 1309 Ellis Drive, Urbana, Illinois. I asked 2 weeks ago if your engineer could provide me with information as to whether or not Patton Homes had, whether or not they had a building permit. And he was supposed to give me the information today. And whether or not, if he did have one, did your inspectors go up and inspect his work? So I don't know what his answer is. I've never heard.
Okay, well, we're going to have a presentation and a discussion after all the public input, and we're getting close to being done with public input, and so we'll probably have some answers to some of those
sometimes I
questions.
have been told that they said we had to go according to the ordinance or something. Well, I think you need to go according to the law and ordinance too, because if he had a building permit and you have inspectors, you're supposed to inspect. You're supposed to do that. Now that's the law.
Thank you for your concerns. Are there
Mhm.
any comments or questions for Shirley? Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Mrs. Etha Reed? Etha? Sorry. Etha Reed? Oh, okay. I didn't see you standing back.
Am I right? My name is Ethel Reed, 1307 West Tremont. I live in Ellis Subdivision. I'm here too for some answers, and I'm fully supportive with getting something done because it's kind of bad dealing with sewage, and every few months or so you got to have someone out to clean your sewage out and then having it back up on you. And sometimes that happened at the worst of time. I think I shared with you about the experience we had during Family Day of Thanksgiving. My granddaughter had we just purchased a home there, and she had moved in. She was so happy to move in this home. She wanted to have the family in. We even had relatives out of town there. About 30 members. She got tables and chairs rented, set up her nice downstairs. We got there, and before we could get our food set out on the tables, we stood this bad, bad odor. Raw sewage come from next door where they had their sewage rotted out, and it backed up in her lower level. And she's not the only one who had those kind of things happen. And many of us up there are having sewage done, and my brother had his done where he had to go under the main sewage, which was what we're talking about now, sometimes going across the street. Instead of that, he was fortunate enough to get someone that could dig under the street, which would have been this $10,000 we've been told that would cost to do this completely, to get across the street to a main drain. I would like to know why we couldn't have a drain thing to retain our sewage on the south side of the street. Then as all of ours have to go underneath the street and over into the neighbor across the street's yard. Why couldn't we have one on the south side of the street? And I think that wouldn't that solve a lot of that problem? Is there a possibility that you could consider that?
Well, that's what our next agenda item is for discussion on the sewer issues in your subdivision. So we'll be discussing all kinds of options and the ordinance itself. So hopefully we'll have some answers to your question after the presentation.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Joe Lewis Sr.? Is Joe Lewis Sr.? Is that him now? Again, if you can state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
My name is Joe Lewis, 1211 West Tremont, Urbana. I just had some sewer work done on mine, so I had to go across the streets. I was lucky enough to find somebody to go underneath the streets, which saved me some money, but didn't save me a whole lot. I was quoted $10,000 to get the job done. And really, I guess I come to the city for some help, but I didn't get it. So I guess in support of something being done.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions? Diane?
Mr. Lewis?
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Diane had a comment or question for you.
Okay.
Did you actually pay $10,000 for the work?
No, I did not.
How much did it cost you?
I got $3,600.
$3,600.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would he have been qualified for reimbursement under our ordinance? Okay, so this just went under it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming. Bessie Johnson? She doesn't wish to speak, but in support of looking at options for the Dr. Ellis subdivision. Lawrence Dell Owens, again, doesn't want to speak, but is in favor of the discussion of options for the Dr. Ellis subdivision sanitary sewer connection. Clara Bright? Clara Bright?
Good evening. My name is Clara Bright, and I live at 1208 West Tremont in Urbana, and I have been living there since 1964. When I moved there, was just a very few homes built there at that time. And over the years, I've seen a lot of plumbing going on in our area because of sewage problem. And so we are hoping and praying tonight that you all can do something about it. When I was looking at the price and just listening at Mr. Lewis saying that he had to pay $3,600, well, I'm sure you can see I am a senior citizen, 80 years old, and I cannot come up with no $10,000, not even $6,000, $3,000. And I think that if something can be done, some of you all probably wasn't even born at the time we moved in there. But I think that you can get together and do something about this problem, because I don't mind paying from my house to the sidewalk for the plumbers to come out, take care of the sewage. But going in the streets, the thing that really bothers me is if I wanted to block off in front of my house, I got to get a permit from you guys in order to block it off to do something. But if the street, the sewage break down, then I got to pay for it. It doesn't make sense to me. And also, when you all sent when we have these letters and things, we pay sewage and we pay taxes, and I cannot understand why we would be responsible for the streets. Now, as I say, from the sidewalk to my house, I don't have a problem with that. But when you're talking about the street that the city owns, even in my yard, I have a tree, and I was going to cut it down, and someone told me that I had to go through the city in order to do that. So the city owns my tree. So it seems like, you would be the one paying to get the tree cut down and also taking care of the streets, since you have that authority
to say I have to have a permit to do this and that.
You
And
have
if-
you have 1 minute, Ms. Bright.
Okay, well, I just hope you all take this under consideration, because you might get to be 80 years old and run into the same thing, okay?
Are there any comments or questions for Clara? Thank you for coming. Renee Renfro? Okay. Gloria Hendricks? And David Pelmore, not speaking, but in support of the discussion. And remember to give us your name and address. Thank you.
My name is David Pelmore. I stay at 1209 West Tremont in Urbana. And all I want to say is that there has been plenty of sewage problems in that neighborhood. I mean, I can attest to everybody, even Mr. Lewis. I stay next door to him. I seen the damage and what he had to do to get his sewage line all the way across the street. Ms. Carter's yard, who he had to dig up as well. It's just not fair. And years ago in the 60s, my dad had to do the same thing over on Lincoln Avenue, and the city of Urbana made the right choice to do that then, and I pray that they would make the right choice to do that now.
Are there any comments or questions for David? Diane?
What exactly did they do on Lincoln Avenue?
They had the sewage problem, pretty much the same deal as this, over by King Park, over off of like Lincoln Avenue when we used to, that's where I grew up, and they had the same issue, and at the time they debated it, and the city of Urbana decided to go ahead and take care of that. I'm pretty sure you could probably look it up in your records if you used to check on it, and I was just hoping that you guys would make the same decision.
By taking care of it, what did they do?
They went on ahead and decided to pay for the from the sidewalk to the street, as far as the sewage and
repairing the lateral. Repairing laterals from the home.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's the last of public input, except for the people who want to hear the report first and then be addressed after that. So, Brad Bennett and I don't have a card for you, Carol. Carol McCusick, and again, state your name, your address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Carol McCusick, 1907 North Cunningham. Well, there was a special meeting this evening, and on the agenda there wasn't any petitions and communications, and in earlier special meeting of December 10th there was. So I was going to bring up that inconsistency and ask if the council rules in the municipal code should say that there would be a parliamentary authority at every council meeting, so we can ask questions like that, like whether public participation, the way that you have rules for that now, would mean that it would be even at any special meeting, because the way it reads, okay, is, this is the beginning of it, any person who seeks to address the members of a commission, committee, or other official body of the city at any public meeting will be permitted to speak on any matter listed on the agenda or any other matter of public concern. As then the other provisions follow, including the one if there's more than 20 people, it can be changed from 5 to 3 minutes. But there's it's specific here, and I guess the next thing I want to say is you can really appreciate how important public comment is, because it's like the only place where we talk to each other before the people who have the power. So I'd like to say that, and also that it affords a way for you to to say more than just supporting something or being
You have
against it.
1 minute, Ms.
You can
McKusick.
try to even bring up a whole new topic or suggest something, and I'm suggesting that the public comment law might have needed to be passed by 2/3 vote of council. And I'm wondering about that. Also, the state law says any person shall be permitted an opportunity to address public officials under rules established and recorded by the public body. So does the council have to make the ones for council and all the commissions have to make the runs for their own commissions? I think that needs some attention. And what could be more important? This is an instrument for any issue, municipal electric aggregation, the sewer lines. So couldn't we have a special meeting to get this straightened out? Or
Phyllis, maybe you could address this, but the special meeting we had tonight was a closed session, Carol. It wasn't a public, open to the public. It was a closed session, this note, and it just has to be noticed, what, 72 hours? Am I correct about that, Phyllis?
48 hours in advance.
That the council will be
Yes.
going into closed session.
Yes.
So this was not for the public. This was a closed session meeting that was held upstairs. So if you have other concerns that you want addressed, Phyllis or the mayor can address those concerns. But as far as tonight's special meeting that happened at 6 o'clock, it wasn't open to the public. It was a closed session meeting.
well, the concern would be that the council rules say under this would be under administration, elected officials, city council, rules for deliberations, section 2.27 of the municipal code. It says the city council shall determine its own rules of proceeding, which rules must be adopted and approved by a 2/3 vote of all the members of the council. So I was wondering if could go to the approved minutes of May 16th of 2011 and see if the public comment law was approved by 2/3 of you. Or doesn't it need to
Eric
be?
Jacobson?
Yeah, maybe we're talking past each other, but the closed session was for the specific purpose of discussing labor negotiations, and that is specifically a specific exclusion that's written into the Open Meetings Act that a closed session is permitted for that purpose. There are a number of other exclusions, and that's one of the ones that's specifically mentioned. So there's no, at a meeting like that, there's no room for public comment. Of course, at the end of the day, the labor agreement that's reached becomes public information, but not the discussions on the part of the council with respect to the labor negotiations.
Thank you, Eric. Are there any other comments or questions for Carol? Thanks, Carol. Brad and Bill? So let me, hold on. I should read what we're at. We are at number 5 of the agenda, discussion for the sanitary sewer lateral reimbursement program for the Dr. Ellis subdivision sanitary sewer concerns. And we have Brad Bennett and Bill Gray, and they're going to give us a presentation, and we'll discuss it. We also have a few more comments that I have 5 people who want to speak after Brad and Bill. And for people who had questions, keep your ears open because Brad and Bill might have some answers to those questions for you. Take it away.
You want to start?
This evening, hopefully, we'll answer many of the questions raised tonight in the last 2 Monday nights. And We're here to try to answer questions, dig for more information if need be, get more answers if need be. But Brad has a pretty in-depth presentation, and I'd like to turn it over to him to start.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the sanitary sewer system and the lateral reimbursement program. The way I have the structure or the presentation kind of structured is talk a little bit about background information about what is the sanitary sewer system, and then we'll transition into the sewer lateral reimbursement program. Like I said, a little bit background on sewers. Here in Urbana, we have 2 types of sewer systems. Some communities only have one, where basically the rainwater waste and the sanitary waste coming out of the house go into a combined pipe. Those are called combined sewers. Here in Urbana, we have a separate sewer system. So, all your plumbing fixtures in your house are hooked up to what they call the sanitary sewer system, as opposed to the street drains, and in some houses the sump pumps and the roof drains are hooked up to a storm sewer system, which is what this first graphic illustrates. Talk a little bit about terminology. The sewer lateral is the pipe that connects the house to the city collector sewer, and what you can see in this particular graphic, this is where my arrow is right here, is what we would refer to as a sewer lateral line, versus this circle here that's connecting into that pipe is a city collector sewer system. Talk a little bit about the hierarchy of the sewer system. It's kind of like a road system. There's arterials, and there's collectors, and then there's kind of local roads, making that analogy to the sewer system. The big pipes out there are what we call interceptor sewers. Those are owned by the Urbana Champaign Sanitary District. Those are the big pipes that carry a lot of the wastewater flows to the wastewater treatment plant. Point out the city doesn't own those, the sanitary district does, and the sanitary district also owns the treatment plant. They charge a separate fee to all residents in Champaign and Urbana to maintain those interceptor pipes and for the wastewater treatment plant. Kind of the next lower classification of sewers would be the collector sewers, and these are owned by the cities. If obviously here in Urbana, it's owned by Urbana, and over in Champaign, they're owned by Champaign. But these are the sewers that pick up the sewer laterals or the flows from each of the residents and businesses or properties and carry them to the interceptor sewers. And then the lowest classification of the sewers, or the smallest ones, are typically the sanitary laterals, and those are basically the pipes that carry the wastewater from the home to the city sewer system. As far as footages, here in the city of Urbana, we have about 100 miles of the collector sewer system. I would anticipate we probably have about the same mile of sanitary laterals. The sanitary laterals are actually owned and maintained by the property owner. To kind of give you an example of how this works out in the real world, you can see on this particular map, the dark blue line is the district interceptor. You've got the city collector sewers, which are shown in green, and the city collectors are typically 8 through 12-inch pipes, inch diameter pipes, and those come, and I don't have all the laterals shown on here, but typically these pink lines are the pipes that come off the house and collect into the city collector system. So that's just kind of give you an example. Once again, the ownership of the blue line is the sanitary district. The ownership of the green lines, are the city, and then the pink line are the responsibility of the individual property owners. We do have a number of ordinances and statutes that establish what our existing sewer policy is. One question that's come up is where should the sewers be located? In our subdivision and land development code, it very clearly states that the sanitary sewer collector sewers, or the city sewers, are supposed to be located in right-of-ways or easements dedicated to the city, so that they aren't located on private property. I'll point out all the laterals are located on private property because they connect up to the house's plumbing system. They carry it out to the collector system, so at some point they cross into the city right-of-way or easement to get to that collector sewer. Just to give you some examples of locations of sewers we have in Urbana, this is an example, and this is for the, from the Ellis subdivision. This is where the collector sewer is located in the right-of-way. Typically, in most areas of Urbana, because of the cost of constructing sewer system, there is only one sanitary sewer pipe on a street. We do have some isolated locations where, there are more than one sanitary sewer pipe. There might be one on each side of the street. That's more the exception rather than the rule. When a development comes in, all the sanitary sewer initial construction cost is borne by the developer. The city doesn't contribute anything. That cost is in turn recouped by the developer. You know, they incorporate that cost into the cost of the lot, which is one of the reasons why if you buy real estate nowadays, you're paying, you know, $50,000, $60,000 for a residential lot sometimes, because that infrastructure cost is buried in that cost. But you know, due to the cost, typically there is only one sewer run on the street. In this case, over here on Tremont, the sanitary sewer, the collector system sewer for the city is shown as the light green line here. And you can see it's located in the right-of-way on the north side of the street. This is an example from a newer subdivision. This is over in the Stone Creek area. You can see this is an area that is continuing to build out. And you can see this is an example of where the sewer is actually located, not in the right-of-way, but actually in a private easement behind the sidewalk. You know, one of the reasons that developers locate the sanitary sewer outside the pavement sometimes is to save the cost. If the pipe is out in the middle of the street, you know, they have to have stone backfill, which has a tendency to drive up the cost of the sewer installation. This is an example. This is another example. This is over on Nevada Street, kind of down in the more historical area of Urbana. And this shows the sanitary sewer located down the center line of the street. A lot of people think this is kind of the typical configuration. I'd point out here in Urbana we have sewers in the middle of the street, we have them in the parkways, we have them in the front yard, we have them in the backyards, we have them in the side yards. So it's really kind of a mixed bag as far as they're located. You know, this is an example from southeast Urbana. This is kind of over in the Sunnycrest, Brookwood area. This is an example where they were located in the backyard. We presently discourage this, and we really don't allow this anymore. The advantage of having it in the front yard or the street is people typically don't locate fences or sheds in their front yard like they do the backyard. So we have a lot of access issues when the sanitary sewer is located in the backyard. It does save, obviously, pavement costs, but because people like to build fences and put up sheds and kids' playground equipment, and they typically do it over the pipe, so if we have to get access to it, it creates problems. And then as far as sanitary sewer lateral ownership, and this has been on the books for a number of years, but Section 2438, paragraph C, specifies that the sanitary sewer lateral is the responsibility of the property owner to maintain, repair, rehab, replace. I think that's always been our policy in Urbana. I'm not aware that we've ever made any exceptions to that policy. I'll point out Champaign and Savoy and really all the surrounding communities, Danville, Mattoon, Charleston, Decatur, Danville, have similar policies. We have not been able to find any communities that I'm aware of here in Illinois that actually take responsibility or ownership of the lateral. Typically it is something that is deferred upon the property owner. This graphic is just kind of help explain or help people understand when we're talking about the lateral we're talking about. You know, really the lateral runs from the building, you know, through the property line or the easement line all the way out to the point of connection into the city sewer system. What I'd like to do next is talk a little bit about some of the pipe materials that these laterals are made out of. Generally, there's 5 type. Clay, which I think is probably our most common, I would guess makes up 90-95% of our system, particularly in the historic areas. Cast iron, which we don't see too much of, but occasionally run into, where the entire line from the house to the city sewer is cast iron. A lot of times inside the home, you'll in the older homes, you'll find cast iron piping. There's the infamous Orangeburg, which was kind of a novel concept for pipe. I'm not aware of any city-owned sewer systems that were constructed with this, but occasionally I hear of laterals or, you know, people that have pipes that were built out of this. But it was a wood fiber, a cellulose product that was coated with coal tar. I've heard it also described as basically cardboard with an asphalt treatment on it. they've had a lot of durability problems with that. That particular type of pipe obviously hasn't held up very well. And then, of course, we have concrete pipe, which isn't too prevalent in the sanitary sewer system. Like I said, mostly it's what we have here in Urbana. People's services are either clay or plastic. And then plastic, which is what we currently require to be installed for sewer laterals on any new construction. But I'll point out that really wasn't available into the 1980s. You know, back when some of these older subdivisions were constructed, that particular type of material was not available or approved by the city of Urbana. And I'll point out our sewer system really ranges in age. You know, we have some parts of our city that are, you know, over 100 years old, and the pipes, you know, date back from that era. And all the pipe materials, probably with the exception of Orangeburg pipe, have a life of, you know, 50 to 100 years. So, you know, when they reach, you know, that 50 to 100 year period, they can fail and require replacement. There's no piping product out there that lasts forever. Unfortunately, the Orangeburg pipe, I think the estimated life on that was like 10 to 20 years, so it was actually much shorter than the other products. But just wanted to point that out. Here's some examples just to help people visualize what the different pipe materials are. You know, this is clay pipe, which I said is a prevalent type here. Cast iron pipe, the concrete pipe, the infamous Orangeburg pipe, which wasn't orange. I'm not sure how they came up with the name. It must have been the manufacturer's name for it. And then, you know, the plastic pipe. I'd like to point out a little bit too on some of the joint technologies. A lot of the root problems are due to the roots coming in through the joints of the pipe. And what you can see in this picture, for the plastic pipe, they have an extremely tight joint system now. It's a bell and spigot, so you have one end of the pipe is larger than the other to allow one end to fit inside the other. And then they use a rubber gasket that slips over this ring here that mates inside of it. With the high tolerances they have in the manufacture of PVC pipe nowadays, you know, they get a watertight, airtight seal at the joint, which keeps any roots from coming in and also keeps any water from infiltrating into the sanitary sewer system. So what I discuss next, maybe some of the common lateral problems that, you know, we see and people experience here in Urbana. You know, typically the problems occur with roots getting into the line, the line structurally failing or collapsing, and that creating a backup issue. Sometimes lines become plugged with debris. And finally, if you have a concrete or cast iron pipe, because sewage has kind of a acidic gas that it gives off over time, it will actually corrode the inside of concrete and cast iron pipes. Some graphics just to kind of show. This is kind of your typical clay pipe. This would have been kind of in the era back of the Dr. Ellis subdivision. You can see they did have a bell joint, but with the manufacturer of clay pipe, their tolerances weren't very high. So, you know, there was always a little space between the smaller pipe and the bigger pipe at the joint. You can see they sealed that with mortar, you know, a concrete type product to seal that up. Well, over time, you know, concrete or mortar breaks down. You know, there can be slight movements in the ground. You know, that pulls apart. And what that does is a lot of times you'll see the tree roots come down and come in through the joints and then start growing inside the pipe. And that's what creates your backup issue. I could tell you it's a problem that's nationwide, whether it's from California or Maine. Everyone I talk to in the sewer industry fights this problem. You know, no one's come up with a magic solution. The two ways you deal with roots are either you cut it and treat it with a herbicide on a regular maintenance basis to keep the roots from growing in there, or you look at replacement of the pipe to eliminate that weak joint where those roots are coming in. You know, another issue we see is just as the pipes age, they'll get brittle. They'll start allowing material around it to start washing into the pipe, and that creates, you know, fatigue and stress on the pipe. And as you can see in these graphics, eventually it'll start cracking at the quadrants, kind of oval out, and then it'll ultimately collapse. And obviously when it collapses, it's going to create a backup issue. Another common backup we see is from debris. Usually the number one culprit for backups is grease. This is a picture of an inside of a pipe, you know, that's been accumulating grease. I've seen some of these where it completely closes. I mean, this is, you know, from, you know, residents or businesses dumping, you know, grease down the drain is what this results from. Also, I mean, any type of product you put down your plumbing fixtures, whether it's a diaper or, some sort of hygiene product can, if it gets caught in the sewer pipe, can create a backup. And finally, the corrosion, like I mentioned, on some of our concrete and cast iron sewer pipes, the pipe will literally over time get eaten away and corrode. We do keep track of all sewer complaints in Urbana. In fact, from 2010 on, we've actually been plotting them out on our geographical information system, so we can actually look for patterns of backups and complaints, and then appropriate respond to those. If there's improvements we need to make to the collector sewer system through lining or replacement, we can look for patterns and then address it based on that. This is for the Dr. Ellis subdivision area. And I apologize, it's kind of hard to read this one because of the scale. We're zoomed out, but basically the properties that are highlighted in light blue are ones where we had reported backups that were related to the lateral. The city standard procedure is if you call in a sewer complaint, we'll send our sewer operational crew out with the Vector truck. They'll check the city sewers to make sure they're down and running and not the source of the problem. At that point, if it's not the city sewer that's a problem, we'll advise the resident that they need to contact a sewer cleaning contractor to get their lateral cleaned and opened up. So we do keep track of whether the problem was in the residence line or whether it's in the city line. I'd say the pinkish orange here, those indicate ones where properties that experience backups, due to the city sewer being plugged. So we do keep track of them separately. But this is what I had for the Dr. Ellis subdivision. I'll point out these are reported. I'm not saying this is every backup problem that occurred. These were the ones that were called into Public Works and that we responded to.
Brad, how
Yes.
does this compare to the rest of the city?
Based on the data that I've seen from 2010, there isn't a significant difference between here and other parts that have the same age of subdivision. Obviously, if you go down in Behringer Commons or Stone Creek, because they're new or plastic pipe, you don't see as many.
But if you're looking at neighborhoods similar to Dr. Ellis, you see about the same number.
Yeah, and in fact, if you go in some of
reported
our
ones.
older neighborhoods down more in the State Street area, you'll see a similar pattern to what they have here. What I'd like to do is talk next a little bit about our sewer lateral reimbursement program. This was established back in 2007. We had a lot of debate and discussion similar to what we're having now about the sewer laterals. There was some discussion, debate on whether the city should assume ownership of that. We discussed all the options available at the time, and it was decided that the best and lowest cost way to proceed on it would be to have a reimbursement program where we would reimburse residents who's had to make sewer repairs under city streets, some of the cost of it to make it more equitable, so that they wouldn't have to be paying much more than, people that had the sewers located in their backyards or front yards, to eliminate some of that expensive pavement replacing costs. And the council passed an ordinance. It was 2007-12-138 on December 17, 2007. It became effective on July 1st, 2008. The funding mechanism for that was an increase in the sewer benefit tax. The city levies a sewer benefit tax or fee to all residents in Urbana. That pays for the cost of maintaining the collector sewer system. It does not cover laterals with the exception of this lateral reimbursement program, which was adopted then. At the time, we raised everybody's sewer fee by about $2.10 annually to pay for that reimbursement program. That reimbursement program provided a 50% cost reimbursement for all the items associated with the sidewalk removal and replacement. So it covered traffic control, it covered the removal and replacement of pavement, whether it was sidewalk or street, and then the backfill all the way down to the pipe. We did set a maximum ceiling level of $3,000, and as I mentioned earlier, it was funded by an increase in the sewer benefit tax. The intention of that ordinance was to ease the financial burden for property owners that have to remove and replace, city street, alley, or sidewalk. Since we started the program back in 2008, we've had 24 participants, and we've distributed about $45,000. One of the things I want to point out, it is a reimbursement program. The property owner has to be the one that goes out and arranges with the contractor and gets the repair done. And after the repair is complete, they submit invoices to us, and then we reimburse them for that 50% amount.
And the property owner is notified when? How does the property owner know about this reimbursement? opportunity?
Well, we actually employ 3 ways to try to reach them, and it is challenging, to reach everybody about this. We do on the actual permit form, there is information, reminding people about the, reimbursement program. We also have the information posted on our website, and then additionally, we try to work with all the local sewer contractors to make them aware of the program, and that's probably where we've had the greatest success, is getting them to buy into it, and then whenever they get someone that contacts them about making a sewer repair, they're very quick to point out, hey, I could get you some money from the city for, if the repair is out in the street. So actually, the sewer contractors have been very helpful.
So a person with a sewer repair has to get a permit, and when they get the permit, then they find out about the program.
Well, I'll point out, usually it's the contractor that actually gets the permit from the city. So a lot of times, the resident doesn't actually see the permit. The person they contract with gets it. But like I said, most of the ones that I've dealt with, usually it's the contractor that actually makes the resident aware of the reimbursement program. In fact, some of them I think might use it as a selling point, saying, hey, if you contract with me, I know how to use the city's program and we can get you a reimbursement.
And the maximum reimbursement in Champaign is how much?
I had that in my memo. I want to say it was $1,500 if it's not a brick street, and then they went up to $2,500 if it was a brick street.
So it's less than Urbana's.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a little bit concerned about the incentives here in the following sense, that if the pipe can be cleaned without tearing up the street, then it's going to be a lot cheaper than if the pipe has to be replaced. Yet there seems to be an incentive here for the sewer contractor to tell the owner that the pipe has to be replaced. And in fact, we heard testimony earlier this evening that an individual got a quote for $10,000, but actually was able to achieve the repair for $3,600. And so as we move forward into considering what to do about that, I am a little concerned that we have created a kind of perverse incentive for the contractor.
Well, we do as part of the reimbursement program, the engineering division has to verify that indeed, the sewer repair was required to be made, so that there was an actual collapse or the roots were bad enough that it did require replacement. But as far as, we as the city don't dictate, what the repair technology is or who they contract with. And there can be a huge variance between sewer repair contractors. We always encourage people to get, at least 2 or 3 price estimates, because sometimes, like I said, there can be a huge variation in cost. Unfortunately, a lot of times when this happens, it's an emergency situation. Sewage is backing up into the house, and a lot of people don't have the time to try to call and get 2 or 3, price quotations. They just want to go in the phone book, find one person, and get them out there and get it fixed. So, I mean, we try to be sensitive to that too. For example, with our overhead sewer reimbursement program, we actually require 3 written estimates for that. We haven't been for the sewer lateral reimbursement because a lot of times it's a time-sensitive matter where they have to get the pipe repaired as quickly as possible because they literally don't have use of their sewer system.
But if you have to ascertain that a replacement was indeed necessary, it could be done, after the fact is a little bit late if a person's already paid for the full replacement.
I would add that, and we had someone from the public testify to this, but if it's root problem, not these other defects that Brad talked about, it's a factor of 10 as far as cost. I mean, to power rot out a sewer line because of roots is going to be on the order of hundreds of dollars. To replace the pipe is in the order of thousands of dollars. So I don't think it's a perverse incentive here. I think the maintenance, although it may be annual or every 3 or so many years, but the replacement part is a lot more expensive than just the maintenance part.
No, the concern I have is that a homeowner may be led to believe that they have to do a replacement when all they really needed to do was route out the line.
I can't say all the time, but many times city staff are involved with homeowners in providing some guidance or at least information. typically we're the first to be called on these sewer backups anyway, so there is some contact made. And maybe one thing I'm hearing tonight that could be better is more of a litany of options or information to homeowners to educate them on what to do under certain circumstances.
Yeah, the map showed that where the problems were in Ellis
Mhm.
subdivision, and you said that those were things that were reported to Public Works.
Mhm.
Well, is there any coordination between the permits to replace the sewer and calls to Public Works? Because somebody could just get it replaced and never even talk to Public Works, right?
Well, we do coordinate with the building safety folks that issue the permits.
The permits? Okay.
But with the laterals, if the problem is in the lateral, we as the city, under current policy, we can't really do anything. Where we have a tendency to try to look for trends or concentrations of problems are when it's related to a backup in the city sewer, because if we're seeing a number of incidences occurring, that's an indication that there's a problem with the city sewer, and we'll want to get in there and line it or clean it or somehow fix that pipe to prevent that from occurring in the future. So we do keep track of where we have problems in the laterals, but really when there's a problem in the lateral, there's nothing the city can do because it's not our responsibility. We can't go in and fix it or do anything.
Okay, and on the reimbursements, the $45,000,
Mhm.
is if the problems are sort of equal between the state streets and Ellis subdivision, are the reimbursements pretty equal, or is it all in one place and not in the other?
Well, actually, I'm going to jump to this graphic right here. This shows, since we started the program in 2008, these are the participants in the program. We have just kind of a red pin dot, and once again, I apologize for the small scale on this, but in order to show the entire city, you can see it seems like most of the reimbursements are kind of concentrated in the central area of the city here. This is Cunningham Avenue here. This is Lincoln over here. University is over here. So that's the distribution that we had. You wouldn't expect to see any over here in Behringer Commons or down here in Stone Creek because they're relatively new areas. But, there's lots of parts of Urbana that, have very old sewer pipes. So it is a pretty wide distribution.
But there are none in Dr. Ellis subdivision. Does that mean there were no laterals that had to be replaced that involved repairing streets or sidewalks?
No, that just means no one participated in the program.
So there could have been.
And in fact, we went through and checked the right-of-way permits and plumbing permits from 2008 on, which is when the program started, and we did come across there was one property there that it looked like they had a sewer replacement out into the street, but they, for whatever reason, chose not to participate in the program. It could have been that they were not aware of it.
They weren't aware of it.
I had Robert and then Dennis. Robert, did you still have something?
Comment that, in your assessment early on, and I appreciate all that's been done in terms of looking at the values, but it was the values that were, the assumptions that were made were assumptions made on what had to be replaced. For example, sidewalk, concrete pavement, etc. And I think with that assumption, you would come up with a high value, a reasonably high value, but there are other techniques that exist that would give people a better option, and that was testified to tonight, that in lieu of a $10,000 bill, he paid $3,000. So I think the assessment of putting a value on something that you assume is going to happen with all the technology that exists today is a false assumption. And I think we need to reassess that.
Robert? Or sorry, Dennis?
Close because my last name is
I
Roberts.
know, I just...
And I got that all my life.
I do it every week.
That's great. I guess I have two comments or two questions for Brad. One is, was the plan set up with the intent of helping to reimburse for sewer lines that crossed the street and required extra assistance. Was it set up initially for the benefit of those who, was it a universal program, or was it really intended for those who have are in a census tract area or have diminished incomes? In other words, maybe have, like, is it based at all, or is it tied in at all to income levels, how this reimbursement has been handled?
And that's a great question. No, it's all Urbana property owners are eligible for it. It's not tied to income, or it's only available to single-family residential. It's basically available to any property owner.
So if you lived on Pennsylvania Avenue, you could get it if you knew about it and asked for it.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, you've got to have a sewer lateral that requires replacement to be eligible
Well,
for
yes.
it. But as long as you have that, you are eligible.
All right. My second question is, I haven't really heard anybody comment or address one of the questions of Bishop or Evelyn Underwood, having to do with the really the beginning of the layout of the sewer line in the neighborhood up there. And they had asked if when the developer actually built the neighborhood, what's the history that the city knows about? And I guess I'm asking if Public Works has gone into the question of was the practice at this time very different from what we do today, but at the time was it accepted as being standard practice to lay the sewer lines out using the materials and the layout that we know about today? And they also asked if the work had been permitted and vetted as far as, inspected. That's like it's a basic useful question, because I know that there are certain streets in the historic East Urbana neighborhood near Washington where the developer was allowed not to even put in streetlights, even though city code required streetlights. So there have been in the past, as far as utilities go, public utilities go, deviations from norm. And I'm wondering if there's been any due diligence in looking into the appropriateness of the initial installation. And do we feel pretty confident that the lines there were handled in a normal and professional manner?
If I could interrupt. Are you finished with your presentation?
No, I still have more.
I mean, there's more to. I think he's got the answer to that question here. When he
I
finishes,
was just
so.
going to say, let's let Brad
We
finish
kinda
his
didn't let him
presentation,
finish.
and then we'll open it up for discussion and let the 5 people that want to speak.
Okay, good. And this just shows the sewer lateral reimbursement program participation. Like I said, it started out in 2008, and you can see, I mean, we have had an issue getting the word out about the program. It has been a challenge. I'll point out here in the last 2-3 years, we have seen an increase, and we think this is the fact that we are getting the information out to the contractors who are making the property owners aware of it when they're working with them on the actual sewer repair. So, I was quite pleased to see that we're up to 9 repairs in 2012. But I'll point out, too, remember, we have a $3,000 maximum cap, but you can see, based on these given years, most of the reimbursements aren't even coming close to what that maximum cap is. So, I mean, we're well under, what our funding, we had assumed 14 repairs a year at $3,000 a piece when we established the initial program. And, so we had $42,000 a year budgeted, for the reimbursement program. But, most of the repairs are coming in well under $3,000. Like I mentioned, this was the distribution of the location. One of the things we're looking input from you is, should we look at modifying the program? Do we need to increase the reimbursement level or the maximum level that's available? We'll point out that if you wanted to go to 100% reimbursement, we'd be looking at raising, for the average residential property owner, their annual increase on the sewer benefit tax would be about $2.10 a year. And this would allow us to go up to that 14 repairs a year, at a maximum 100% reimbursement of $6,000 each. Before I get into, some of the city efforts that we've done up in the Dr. Ellis subdivision neighborhood, I'd like to, at this point, bring Kelly Murkowski in, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the funding options. We've got the sewer lateral reimbursement program to, assist residents with some of the costs. I'll point out too that there is a optional insurance program that's offered in this area. It's called the Line Saver program. I do get calls from residents asking me about this program, so I know they are actively marketing in this area. But what that program is, like I said, it's a insurance program run by a private entity. The city has no affiliation or endorsement of it, but they have an insurance program where you pay a monthly fee, and it insures your line. So if you have a problem with your sewer lateral line, you can make a claim against their insurance and get some of those costs or all of the costs paid for. But it is an insurance program, so you have to pay a monthly fee into it. And Kelly's here to talk a little bit about another assistance program we have potentially for low-income residents. So I'll turn it over to Kelly then.
Yes, with our community development block grant, we have home improvement programs, and one of them in particular is our emergency grant program, which is available to very low homeowners for repair of health and safety items. And on this brochure, it shows it on the back. And one of those that it's sewer is a possibility as well, in addition to, because it says plumbing. There are eligibility requirements, however. It has to be a homeowner who has lived in their home for a minimum of a year. It must be within Urbana city limits, and they must have property insurance. And there is household income may not exceed 50% of the area median income. And on the back, there's a chart showing the income limits. So, and the maximum funding for this grant is $5,000 per household. And we accept applications throughout the year. So, so somebody, if they needed assistance, they could contact our division, and we would take application, get information, and see if they would be eligible. And we have a list of contractors that would go in and would do the clean out or inspection. So that is a possible program.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kelly. And kind of for this last part of the presentation, I only have a couple slides left, I promise. But, we have done some work in the Dr. Ellis subdivision area. What this is a graphic of is shows some of our cured in place lining efforts. This is where I get to use my cool visual aid that I'm going to pull out here in a minute. But you can see this is some of the, the sewer lining that we've done, which is essentially inserting a new pipe inside the existing pipe to rehab it. On Beardsley, Eureka, and Tremont, the type of sewer pipe they used at the time was ribbed concrete, so it was a concrete pipe, even though most of the laterals that connect to it are clay. It had experienced corrosion problems. We also had quite a bit of root infiltration coming in through the joints, so we did go ahead and line those. So all the locations here that are highlighted in yellow are pipes that we've lined, and you can see we did some lining in 2011. The numbers in red indicate the year that we installed the sewer lining. So on Eureka we did some lining in 2009 as well as on Tremont. This is the sewer lining that I'm talking about. They put a felt liner inside the pipe. It's got a polystyrene resin on it. You can see this is a sample that we had done on one of our sewer lining projects. You can imagine the plastic pipe is an old clay or concrete pipe. For taking the sample, we used a new pipe to do the liner inside of. But essentially, they run the felt bag through. They heat it at a high temperature with steam, and that sets the resin, and it gets almost like a fiberglass, like a boat fiberglass hardness on it. And I'll pass this around if anyone wants to take a look at it. But this is what we used in that area. It is a great product. We don't have to dig up the street. It lasts. It's got a life of about 50 to 100 years. And probably the thing we like most about it is when we install it manhole to manhole, it eliminates all the joint problems. There's no joints in it, so we don't have any root infiltration problems. I'll point out this technology is also available for sewer laterals. There is one contractor in town that will do that for sewer laterals. He's able to excavate down in the yard, put a clean out in and get access to the lateral line, and then he can line all the way out to the street without having to tear the street up. The other technology that you see for lateral replacement is what they call pipe bursting. They essentially run a metal ram through the existing pipe, break it apart, and pull a new plastic pipe behind it. That one you still have to dig down in the street. So the cured in place lining, does have the potential to actually be a lower cost because you can avoid having to dig the street. To do any of the trenchless technologies, as I detailed in the memo, the pipe has to be open and accessible. They have to be able to get a camera through it and the lining equipment or the pipe bursting equipment. So if your line gets too collapsed, too broken or too clogged with roots where you can't get anything through the pipe, you still have to point dig it to fix it because you can't do the trenchless methods without access through the inside of the pipe. And this is a graphic that just shows some of the point repairs we've made in the area. Like I mentioned, the previous one was the cured in place lining. These are point repairs where we kind of did the old-fashioned method. We dug down and fixed what was broken. So here highlighted in yellow, there's a couple locations where we made pipe repairs. You notice these are in the same areas we lined. So in these areas, the pipe was so broken, so broken down or so clogged with roots, we had to dig down, replace a piece of pipe so we could line the rest of the line and complete the rehab project. The two manholes in red here and here are manholes that we went and replaced as part of our rehab efforts in that area. Thank you. I'll have this available afterward if anyone wants to take a look at it.
Can I get that for 10 cents a foot?
No, it's a little more expensive.
If a person wanted to use that to reline their lateral, would they qualify for reimbursement under our program because you're not tearing up the street?
You are correct. Yeah, it would not be eligible because the way the reimbursement program is set up, it only covers the removal and replacement of pavement and the items associated with that.
Do we have a slide on the subdivision plating? I'm trying to recall that.
Yeah, I can pull that up real quick.
Okay. Correct. Yeah, very similar situation as tonight, right?
But that we are really looking into it and seeing what all the options are and that what's best for the city of Urbana and for the citizens of Urbana.
And what this graphic is here is the Ellis subdivision. You can see it's got the different dates that it was platted. You notice the aerial photography date is 1973, so you can see by 1973 it was primarily built out. All the lots were built upon. So to kind of give you an idea, to kind of get to Dennis's question, I did check with our building safety department, and they had different standards back then, but at the time it was built in accordance with the standards that we had in place at the time. As far as the layout of the sewers, as an engineer, I would say it was done in accordance with the appropriate practice. And actually, if someone submitted the same sewer installation locations to us now, we would approve it. As a new subdivision. I mean, on most of our new subdivisions, the sewers are actually located either in the parkway or on private easement behind the sidewalk. That seems to be the preferred location nowadays to install them.
Meaning they're only on one side, and,
Correct.
And they would have this issue of someone has to cross the street.
Correct.
And I can see that this subdivision is really more recent than I expected. 1968, 1961. That doesn't go back to 1930.
No, we do have areas of Urbana that have older infrastructure than this.
Certainly we do, yeah.
So
Charlie?
Brad, sorry. So Brad, this is actually built to essentially current standards, and you find this in other cities in the state of Illinois, right? Is that correct? You know, where they build you either pick the north side or the south side, the east side or the west side, going through any subdivision.
As far as sewer location, now we would no longer allow the materials that were used, you know, at the time when nowadays we've switched over to plastic pipe. Though we still allow clay as an option, you know, for sewer pipes. The clay pipe is improved over time. They now have a plastic bell and spigot joint, which is watertight, airtight.
Right, and so that's why we've gone through and we've been doing the
lining.
The
Yes.
lining. Now I noticed that the actual street named Ellis hasn't been done yet. How many other streets are left in that area? How many other streets are left in town that still have concrete that needs to be lined?
Well, Ellis Street does not have concrete sewer. We've actually televised all the sanitary sewers in that subdivision. The reason the other ones weren't rehabbed is they're not in bad enough shape to warrant, you know, rehab at this time. We'll keep an eye. We try to go through, you know, on a periodic basis. Granted, it'd be like 10 to 20 years, and televise the sewers and verify what condition they are. We only spend rehabilitation dollars where it's really required, and the ones that we lined really needed it due to the root intrusion, structural problems in the pipe, and the corrosion of that ribbed concrete. It needed to be done, and we got it done.
Okay, so now, and follow up to that, my house is 92 years old.
Mhm.
It has clay pipe. I've had one collapse that's been repaired. I have to have it rotted out every couple of years to deal with the roots.
Mhm.
Is the quality of the lateral that I have, that's 92 years old, any different from the quality of laterals put doing clay in other parts of the community?
Well, there can be a huge variation in construction. I mean, the materials could be very similar. You know, it's hard. There's so much variation. It really, a lot of it is a function of whoever was installing it at the time. You know, some, you know, contractors or workers do better work than others. So you could have, you know, 2 lateral pipes installed in the same year in adjacent properties, and depending upon who installed it, there'd be a difference in the quality of construction. So, I mean, we do, you know, have inspection programs to try to ensure that, you know, they are installed correctly and properly, but, you know, sometimes everything is not necessarily always caught.
And so my last question is sort of a summary then. Would you say that the majority of Urbana is built to the city sewer portion is built with pipes on one side of the road or the other?
Correct.
Okay, so is it only in the oldest parts of the community where you have sewers that might be in the center of the road?
I mean, it varies. Like I said, the developer is really the one who, you know, makes the decision where the sewer goes.
Here's your answer right here. So this has got the entire city, all the public sewers are on it. You can pick any neighborhood in the city, and schematically, it'll show you where that sanitary sewer is.
We don't have a summary of, you know, 70 miles one way, 30 miles the other yet. Okay.
I mean, we
Oh, okay.
It's good.
But visually, I could probably pick it out here then. Okay.
Yeah, I would say, you know, we have very few areas that have sanitary sewer on both sides of the road because it's so cost prohibitive to run 2 separate pipes. I mean, you're talking, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars to install an additional sewer pipe just to serve one side of the road.
And you know, where did the idea that the sewers were supposed to go down the center of the street come from?
Well, you know, on local streets where you don't have a lot of traffic, you know, there is some ease of access of getting, you know, to the sewer. The manhole's in the middle of the street. One of the issues we run into locating it in the parkway or the front yard is nobody wants the manhole in their yard. So if you put it in the middle of the street, then no one's stuck with the manhole in their yard. I'll point out the street is the most expensive location to, you know, putting it down the center line of the street because you have to put backfill in above the pipe all the way up to the bottom of the pavement. If you put it in the parkway or in the front yard or the backyard, you can just backfill with dirt, you know, rather than using stone or sand, so it's significantly cheaper.
Diane?
So based on everything that we've seen here tonight and read in our packet, the layout of the sewer system in the Ellis subdivision is similar to the rest of the city. It's older than some areas. It's younger than some other areas. It's got the same kinds of trees that other areas have. But what is there unique about this, if anything? Because we're hearing, is it there are more backups than typically found in the rest of the city, or no? Or is it more collapses than typically found of the laterals, or breakdown of the laterals?
I mean,
or
from,
no?
from an underground infrastructure, related to sewers, I don't see anything that's particularly unique. I'm sure the subdivision is unique for other, but speaking in my area expertise from the underground, I mean, it's very similar to other areas, particularly from that era. I mean, there's a lot of places in southeast Urbana that were built out in that same time that have exactly the same ribbed concrete pipe, and I mean, they have just as many backups and rip problems, Like I said, it's a nationwide problem. It's not unique to the Champaign-Urbana area. Everybody fights rip problems.
So it would be a question of how do you make these things function the best they possibly can, and maybe that's where we can help. Yeah,
and one of the things I want to point and stress out is everything has a finite life. I mean, a pipe is no different than putting a roof on your house. I mean, you put a roof on your house, you expect to get 20, 30 years out of it, but you're going to eventually have to replace it. I mean, the same thing's with the pipe. You put it in the ground, it does not last forever. At some point in the future, it will fail. I mean, it's a given. Whether it fails at 50 years, 75 years, or 100 years, it's going to fail at some point, and it'll have to be replaced. It's got a fixed life. Even the plastic pipe we put in today, I mean, at some point, hopefully it's at 100 years or 125, but at some point it'll have to be replaced too.
Brandon?
Is all of the Ellis subdivision, Ellis, Tremont, the streets we've been talking about, are they all within the CDBG target area so that they would be eligible, anybody income qualified would be eligible in that neighborhood for the program Kelly talked about? Okay, yes. Okay, good. So in this neighborhood, anybody that qualified based on the income qualifications could get up to $5,000 of help from this program with such a repair. And Bill or Brad, how does that, if people are eligible for that based on income and based on living in the CDBG target area, how does that $5,000 grant fit with the reimbursement program of up to $3,000? Can you use both in combination, and has that question ever come up before?
I believe, and Kelly could verify, I believe that they could participate in both.
Oh, wow.
So they could use the CDGV funds to cover the 50% cost that, they were still responsible for.
Okay, that's great.
Kelly or whoever, is this on our website? Yeah, let's be sure that this is, if we don't have it, let's be sure it is, and if we do have it, let's be sure that, as well as we can, that folks know about it.
Dennis?
Yeah, it seems like after all this input and all the information that we've gotten, and we're finding out that this isn't really one of the older neighborhoods, and if the problems of the pipelining were appropriately laid in the appropriate places, the only thing that seems to be really kind of different for this neighborhood is perhaps the income levels, except that I can imagine that people in Scottswood subdivision would have the same problems, and I know that they were in Scottswood, a large part of that neighborhood, the sewer lines were installed and they had that Orangeburg tar-treated cardboard sewer line, because I know that that was one of the issues that came up about 6 years ago when the water collection program that covered, 7 municipal entities did the drainage program that went through the property, the Parks District and the county, and so I mean, and I know that certainly in the southeast, in the historic East Urbana neighborhood, there are families that are stressed financially as well. So I guess what I'm trying to understand, or maybe try to see here, is ways that we can assist this neighborhood, which really is facing the same problem of infrastructure aging as other communities, other parts of our community, but how to give them the assistance that might really make a difference for them financially. And it sounds like not only the program that we have to assist in replacing anything that goes under a street which requires street excavation can be helpful to them. And now we know that this other program through the CDBG funding emergency grant program can also be a benefit. And I'm hoping that, I guess what I'm wondering is if we really see anything that the City Council should do at this point except promote the programs that exist.
Eric?
So the question that came to my mind during this discussion is, how much would it cost to, how much would it cost in terms of a fee, or line saver insurance was mentioned. So I did find online a line saver insurance program for Burlington, Vermont, and probably similar costs to here. So there, the insurance would cost for water line repairs covered up to $8,000 for $5 a month. Sewer lines up to $10,000 for $9 a month, or both of them together for $12 a month. So that's probably sort of order of magnitude. If we were to somehow have a plan, offer a plan, or make a plan available to people, or whatever, it would be, it sounds to me as though that would be the order of magnitude of what each homeowner on the average would have to pay to insure themselves against getting hit with a multi-$1,000 bill once in a while. Have to put in something like $150 a month. So, so if we want to think about something like that, which would be perhaps a tax, and then we would take it on ourselves to actually respond to and get the repairs done for that kind of a fee from each owner of a line. In any case, if we wanted to go that way, that's kind of, it looks like the order of magnitude of what we'd be talking about.
Well, they actually offer the line saver here in Champaign-Urbana, and there are people that participate in that. It's I think it's similar to the numbers that he quoted. I mean, it's a voluntary program, and we as the city, we're approached by the company that offers it and asked to endorse it and promote it. We made the decision not to it, but they promote it and endorse it themselves. And like I said, I do periodically get phone calls from people that receive the promotional, and they want to know, well, does the city endorse this? Do you think I should do this? And we always, our stance is it's completely at the discretion of the property owner if they want to participate in that or not. I mean, it is an insurance program, so if you have a problem, it'll address that and take care of it. Of course, if you never have a problem, then you're paying in a bunch of money for something that you never use.
Sorry. Mayor Pressing.
Well, if you're going to pay $150 a year, in 10 years you'll pay $1,500, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in 20 years you're going to pay $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
In 40 years you're going to pay $6,000. So you're going to pay more in the insurance than it's your likely cost of replacing the lateral, if the lateral is going to cost $3,000.
That's the nature of insurance. You pay more,
right? Or
dribbled out, so you don't get hit with a big bill all at once. Yeah.
Right, but usually insurance is for, something that would be unexpected, and you do expect the pipe is going to fail at some point. So, yeah.
Charlie.
Okay, well, Heather, what you talked about earlier, bringing back why we did this program in the first place, reminded me of a few things. And buried in Brad's slides through this was the fact that everybody pays $2.12 a month?
10 cents.
About $2.10 a month.
No, it's
right?
actually a year.
A year. $2.10 a year, so that the city has the funds to pay for half of the repair when it calls for the $3,000 max. And that half number, as I recall, came from the idea that if you had to rip up the typical two-lane street, the cost of repairing it and sidewalk would be about $6,000. And so that paying for half was like if you only had to go out if you as a homeowner only had to pay for the half going out to a sewer located in the middle of the street. So that was the idea of equalizing and providing for that $3,000 maximum. The one thing we could consider doing is upping that maximum to a higher amount that reflects the actual cost of repairing a typical street like this. We could, which would also, of course, entail an increase in the sewer benefit tax to pay for the program, unless it fits within such an increase would fit within our currently what we bring in. So that'd be one option. The other option would be to make sure that we have enough companies around that can do the work underneath the street so the street doesn't need to be touched in the first place. And if that's a cost-effective method, I think we should be promoting that as and certifying certain companies as being able to do that at a reasonable and substantially cheaper cost than digging up the street.
All right. Brad, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bill, thank you. We have 5 people who wanted to comment after the presentation. And first I have Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood. And again, if you can state your name and your address and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
So the 3 minutes still apply since we don't have the 20 people?
Phyllis? Yes.
I think that's very unfortunate. But I guess since it's not interactive and we're just going to have to just sit here and talk, because some of the things I still disagree with, I need to see myself. I'm disappointed, and I'm very disappointed with the presentation. I don't feel that I'm Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood, 1309 West Tremont Street in Urbana. Ms. Stevenson, and every one of you, the City Council as a whole, I'm very disappointed at the presentation. I don't feel that our questions have been answered. I guess I should have given a lot of questions to Mr. Lewis to ask for us, since I have a lot of questions that I feel have not been answered. And I wish that we could have stopped him and asked questions, because this is new for me. I've done as much research as I could. Saturday night, we couldn't get into the city's website. I said, well, maybe it's me. They know that I'm trying to get in. They're trying to keep me from getting in. I was getting paranoid until I called 2 other people, and they couldn't get in either. So I couldn't do the research that I wanted to do. Anyway, I don't know what happened, why the website was not up at the city, but I couldn't get in all Saturday night to try to do some research that I wanted to do, but I was able to get in. Now, I don't know if I can get an answer to this 24, this presentation at the top here. I guess I won't have time to ask any other questions, but 24 on page 3 of the presentation, section 2438, paragraph C, the top of page 3, you said, of the city code for the city's policy on sewer service lateral.
You have 1 minute, Dr. Underwood.
States that all costs blah, blah, blah. Then when I went to chapter 24, utilities, Under that was Article 2 sewers. Under that was Division 1 general. Under that was the Section 2438. Under that, I found C, the last sentence. Apparently, you left out of the presentation here. It said, and I quote, "The owner shall indemnify the city from any loss or damage that may directly or indirectly be occasioned by the installation of the building, sewer, or any excavation incident to the maintenance and repair." To me, I guess that means, I believe it means, that in addition to everything else, we still got to indemnify the city. So if something really bad happens, we have to insure the city. So that's more money that we have to pay in addition to tearing up the street. It doesn't make sense. Is something wrong with this? Now, it makes me feel like the people way back, taxation without representation. We need to do something about this. I see what you have on paper here, but it's not morally right. There's something wrong with this. And what we're going to do about it, something, if you're with me, Dr. Ellis, we need to do something about it. City of Urbana, we might need to do some change because it's not right. It's not right. The citizen has no right to have to tear up streets. I don't care what they have on paper. If we went to sleep and allowed them to get away with this, we need to stop it and turn this around. Thank you.
My name is Bishop King James Underwood, 1310 Ellis Drive. Mrs. Mayor, to the council, I would like to say this. I noticed when he made his presentation that everything was geared to protect the city. We are taxpayers. What I saw is that he said they wouldn't put the ladder in the middle of the street, so each homeowner would have equal access to the main, because it will cost the city extra money to tear it up. But he pushed the burden on the homeowner, saying that we are responsible because it's our pipe coming from our house to the ladder on the other side of the street when it was placed on the other side of the street, which is not equal access. And I think when you look at the scenario, most of the people up in Dr. Ellis's senior citizen, and most of us on fixed income, you can sit at the desk and figure out all these things and add all the taxes up, and pretty soon you're going to have the older people on welfare, and you're going to pay more money to take care of them on welfare. Why not help them to stay in their homes and be productive citizens, what they want to be, and instead of taxing them out of their homes and making programs that causes them not to be able to work in society, have a home because they are aged. They have put in time in the system and paid taxes to help build this city and this town, and now they're older, and look what they are getting. They are getting the blunt end of everything. I would like to see something done. We know we have a problem, and if we have a problem, we need to work to resolve the problem rather than to put the blame on somebody else. Solve the problem. Thank you.
Diane.
Mr. Underwood?
Mr. Underwood?
I have a question
for you.
Okay.
I am still not clear on how many people actually who live in your subdivision have had their sewer laterals break or be blocked to the point where they had to replace them by drilling under the street. We heard from one man who had the $3,600 bill, but who else has had that happen to them?
Well, there was a number of people before he found someone to do that. You probably don't remember Mr. George Hershey. He used to work for the city. He had the same problem, and I was living on the hill on Ellison. He was living across the street. He had to tear up the street and come in my yard. He got permission from me to come in my yard and dig up the yard because the main was in my yard.
And what year was that?
I don't recall exactly when it was, but he
Was it
has deceased.
Was it before our program was in place for assistance? Was it before 2007 or 8?
Yes, it was before 2000.
So that's another case. Now, how many other cases are there?
There's a lot of other cases. I can go and find the people if you want me to go and check the area. There has been a lot of problems up there.
With replacing the lateral by going under the street, which involved tearing up the street or sidewalks or other public infrastructure.
Yes, but the point is this, is that when the homeowners have to go across the street when it should be in the street, in the center of the street, when we have equal access, and since they put the main on that side, to make it equal access, they need to put a main on the other side in order for it to be equal access.
No, I understand about the layout, but what I'm asking is the actual number of incidences where people in your neighborhood have had to pay for a lateral to be replaced or because it's
there's been a few others. I don't have it on top of my head, but I can go and ask the people in the neighborhood, and I have them come the next meeting.
Well, we probably should get that information before the next meeting.
Sister Reese, her brother, and two others.
Okay. So it's possible if they've had to do that work, then they could apply for the reimbursement, even at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, what assurance do we have after we do the work? Because the way the law is stated that we have to pay upfront everything, and then we'll be reimbursed. And sometimes it doesn't work because sometimes we never get the reimbursement.
CDBG. Since July 1st of 2008, all
So
but all applications have been paid at least 50%. Okay.
So all reimbursements that have been requested have been paid?
No. We got people here that it hasn't been paid to.
Have they applied? And the reason that his didn't get paid for again, Brad, is because they didn't dig in the street, the city streets, or in the sidewalk. Am I correct about that?
You have to actually, there's an application that's online on the city website. The way the reimbursement program works is you fill out an application and turn it in with a receipt that shows that you had the repair made and how much of that repair is related to the pavement, removal and replacement. And then once we receive the application and that receipt showing that the repairs have been paid for, then we issue you the check. But I mean, you have to apply, fill out the one-page application and submit your receipt in order to qualify for the program. So if you don't do those two steps, I mean, we don't have receipt of you applying for the program.
Again, we're in discussion phase and we have a lot to cover, and so I think there's some education that we maybe need to inform people of when it comes to reimbursements and how to apply for those reimbursements. Also CDBG, there's some funds there available that maybe some education could go a long way. And so again, we're still in discussion and we're taking everything into consideration, and we're not just dropping the ball and saying that nothing can be done. We're exploring all of our options when it comes to these issues. Is that all you had for Mr. Unruh? Next I have Reverend Melinda Carr.
Good evening. Reverend Melinda Carr, 211 West Tremont Street, Champaign, and I am representing the Ministerial Alliance of Champaign-Urbana and vicinity Just want to make a few comments, not to repeat some of the other things, but regarding the equal access, it doesn't seem to be covered. It's not being addressed. And it seems to me maybe we needed some comment from a developer to explain why they do mixed, structures. They do down the middle, some on one or either side, where they're thinking about the fact there was an access issue. We don't have a developer's point of view here. And it seems to me that the city should provide some developers information on why they do what they do. We don't have that here as part of this. So there's an imbalance in the information that's being presented. So that's one, the comment, I guess the main comment I wanted to make regarding what I've heard tonight. And so thank you for that. Maybe I'll have some more later, but right now that's what I have. Thank you.
Okay, and Brad, did you catch that, or Bill? Just maybe they want an explanation from a developer as to why one developer might choose to go down the middle and one might go on the north side of the road.
We could talk to developers. Obviously, developers follow subdivision codes and ordinances. Our codes and ordinances say the sewer should be on one side of the street or the other. But again, if the installation of the sewer down the middle of the street is more expensive, as explained earlier by Brad, then more expense will be passed on to the higher cost of the lot.
Right.
So we passed on the lot. If you want to put a sewer on each side of the street so that there is equal access to this public sewer, one on the north side, one on the south side, obviously that's twice the cost of a sanitary sewer. Again, shorter run to the public sewer, but more cost to the lot that the developer has to recover. So that's the basic economics of a developer with respect to the lot and the cost of a sewer.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation.
It's all because the builder pays for the whole system before they sell the lots, to sell the houses, and
Why
all
they're
that.
called developers.
Yeah, yes.
I have Renee Renfro.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Renee Renfro, and I live at 1303 West Tremont in Urbana. And I happen to be one of the residents that bought on the wrong side of the street because I would have to go across. I'm bothered by the assumption that everyone has the money to pay up front for reimbursement. And if you've ever worked for government and waited for government to pay you, it takes a long time, and it's getting worse with the economy. So I think that there should be some work with the homeowner and the contractor so that the money can be paid to the contractor upon completion of the work, rather than assuming that every homeowner has $3,600 in their pockets to pay for sewers. And if we keep building your infrastructure for you, then you'll never have to redo that because we'll keep building those lines across the street. I've been fortunate. I have not had to do that, and I thank the Lord for that. I did talk to the attorney for the city of Champaign about this matter and I explained the situation. I didn't tell, he thought I was a resident of Champaign, but I explained that I was not. He did not express any limit on the amount of money that the city would pay if the lateral was in the right-of-way. It was explained to me that the city of Champaign would take care of it, which leads me to another point. There seems to be a contradiction in terminology. The lateral is our responsibility, but it's in the city's right-of-way, which is your responsibility. So that's contradictory to me. As far as the communication of how to get this program out, I've never heard of it. I don't think a lot of people have heard of it. We get our tax bills. We get mailings about other programs. There is a way to communicate with the residents so that they're aware of the program. You have a lot of elderly people on our streets and in some of the other neighborhoods that have been around for a long time, over by Prairie School. We need to help individuals be able to maintain their homes. If you want to keep your residents in their homes, people who have been there for a long time, contributing to our community. We need to do everything we can to keep people in their homes and not necessarily let them become rental property or have them go up as empty vacant housing. So I would implore you to do whatever is best for the city of Urbana and its residents to help resolve this issue. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Charlie,
I'll
and
let
then Eric.
Eric go first.
Well, I guess it's just, you've jogged my mind into thinking about this, that it could be that one way to communicate about grant programs that are available, if we decide that an insurance program may be a good thing for some people because they may want to buy insurance against getting hit for a big bill all at once, that information about this could be included, could be enclosed in the tax bill, could be enclosed in the bill for the, for the sanitary tax and so forth.
Yeah,
Charlie?
and Mike, what you're suggesting actually might actually be viable too, where under application, emergency assistance grant or something like that, or a program very similar to that, somebody who can't pay it all up front but does qualify for the city's reimbursement, we might be able to arrange for the city to pay to the contractor directly the share that the city would reimburse.
And that gets
That
the
would,
city
that
involved.
would, yeah. So, and one of the things I was trying to explain earlier is that the $3,000 number that we have now came about because that's the that was our estimated cost in 2007 if you had to cross the street completely, we would pay half. Okay, to make it equal to as if the sewer were in the middle of the street, we cover the half to get you to the middle of the street. So we pay half, you pay half, sort of thing. 6,000 was the magic number at that time, and that's the number. That's the other number that we should look at. Is that still a good number as a maximum? We know that the costs of raw materials have gone up and things like that, so maybe we have to tweak that number up. So those are two things that I would be looking at in the coming weeks as one thing. So thank you for the idea.
Thank you.
Mayor Pressing?
Well, for people who couldn't afford to pay it, there could be something like a revolving loan program. But I think the information has to be gotten to the homeowners of all the programs that we do have available. But that's a good issue, that some people don't have the money available, so they can't pay first and then get the reimbursement, so perhaps they could get a loan.
Dennis?
It might be that rather than require application to the program, because we're treating all neighborhoods the same who have an issue about going across the city street to do the repair work on the other side of the right-of-way, maybe it should kick in automatically, that there doesn't have to be an application, that if your city sewer has failed, if your lateral line has failed and the city comes out and indicates that, yes, that has to be replaced, maybe there should not be a requirement that we have to apply for it. Maybe just the application should happen to get the 50% reduction in the fee. And if the person then also can show that they have income below the average mean, maybe then they also become eligible for further assistance to pick up the other half. But maybe we can just make this more efficient by making the application for the reduction automatic. And we only get 14 or 20 of these a year. It seems like we should be able to fund that many repairs.
All right. And last I have Gloria Hendricks.
Good evening. My
Good
name
evening.
is Gloria Hendricks, 1214 West Tremont in Urbana. Many of the questions have been
answered. He did a wonderful job showing me all of that rhetoric and stuff, which didn't really mean that much to me because I didn't really think that was the entire problem. Part of the problem was, where are these main sewers located? Is there one on each street? Are there several on each street? I have one in my yard, so it probably won't affect me the way it will affect other people. But I drove down Tremont, and I saw something on the south side of the street, and I thought it was a sewer. But how are they connected? That is my question. I think they're so jumbled up when they put in those sewer systems. I'm not sure if they really paid attention how these houses were tracked and how they were putting those pipes and things in. Because, like I said, I won't be affected, but here's Mr. Lewis on the opposite side of the street, 3 houses from the corner, and I'm 4 houses from the corner coming from Romine, and he has to go over to my sister's house, and then they're showing me where the main line is in my yard. So I need to know how many sewers are on those streets, and are they all really in operation? That's just my question. Thank
Okay.
you.
Do we have an answer to that question?
If I can get you information, I can give you a sewer map of your street if you want to see. We do have both storm and sanitary sewer.
Well, I have a storm in front, a storm in back, and the sewer thing. I mean, my property is just overflowing with city property. But what about the other residents? I mean, that's my question. And you said you were out there in 2009 or 2008. Well, I lived there. I don't remember. I mean, you might have been, and I may not have been home. But I also know something's going on because when it rains a lot, there's water filled up. And if I don't go out and clean your property, if I don't go out and clean that, it backs up. You know, it just makes a big mess there. So there's a lot of things going on, not just that sewer. So I really hope you take another look into all of this. I really support what Ms. Renfro was saying. And I understand where Mrs. Underwood is coming from because it's very frustrating. I know we're not the only community. So while you're looking at us, you need to take in consideration because I have a feeling this problem is not going to go away. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, thanks a lot. We have this as a discussion item. We've obviously discussed a lot because it's almost 10 o'clock. And I don't know that you need anything more than the questions from us tonight. Or do you need more from us tonight, or just?
No, I
Can
think
I-
there's a few questions raised, and why don't we look at this and that on a few items. The way we reimburse, perhaps, maybe we should raise the not to exceed from 3,000 to some number. We can look more closely at that, although, again, with Brad, well, I'll just leave it at that. I won't go into
Okay,
more discussion, so.
Dennis and then Eric, and then I have a kind of.
So we've had a really good discussion, and we've learned things about the implications of being on the one side of the street versus another. We found out that the sewers have been positioned in a way that's typical, mostly typical throughout the entire city. That we've learned that this neighborhood is not as old as I thought it was. But when you have a problem, you still have a problem. And if you have if you don't have that much money, which a lot of us don't have extra change to dump into these emergencies, it becomes an issue. So maybe my suggestion is that people in the city council make suggestions of what they would like to see as aspects of a new program or maybe a revised program. Send them to Bill Gray. And maybe we can get a summary of those suggestions and a checklist or something that we can vote on. Maybe independent. We can cherry pick the items that we feel would most help this community as a whole, and the Ellis community in particular.
Sure.
For the next meeting.
So I guess the 3 items that seem to me possibly ripe for some kind of action. One is, how do we reimburse? Secondly is, how do we communicate to homeowners? And thirdly, I'd like to see some consideration of the possibilities. How can we facilitate and inform homeowners of an insurance option which would let them, encourage or at least offer them the option in an informed way of getting insurance that they would pay each year that would insure against being hit with a great big bill once in a while. And I know that there was a comment made that yes, you expect to have to do this every once in a while, but in point of fact, smelling the sewage in your house always surprises you, even if you know it was going to happen sometime in the next 10 or 20 or 30 years. So I think that if we can facilitate that being less of a financial shock and less of a trauma to people when it occurs, I think we should do that.
Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, it seems like there still is a disconnect between the feeling of the neighbors who expressed that this is of epidemic proportions and that there are many, many cases of this and of expensive repairs and people having to cross the street and go the whole way across, versus what the city staff's numbers show us, that there have been 0 requests even for reimbursement in the whole Ellis subdivision, at least. And the only way I can explain the gap is just that we have not done enough to educate the residents about the availability of the programs. I think between our 50% reimbursement and our emergency grant program for income qualifying individuals to reimburse them up to $5,000 on top of the 50% reimbursement, it seems like we actually have, starting in 2007, a good set of programs that could help people, but I don't know that there's been much awareness of that and that people have known how to take advantage of it or known when their sewer starts backing up how to consider which choices might be right and make the right repairs. Even knowledge about things like the fact that you can get it lined with the material, Brad, that you showed us, and that will hold up for many, many years and stop the roots from coming back, so you don't have to have it power rotted every 3 years or so. That's really good information. And so to me, the biggest disconnect here is just in us getting the word out about our programs and helping residents know how to navigate this and make the right choices to get their reimbursements and things. So the biggest thing I guess I would ask staff is to think a bit about what we can do to get the word out, whether that's blurbs on UPTV or a mailing or something in the neighborhood newsletter that goes out to the target area, or a variety of things, or a brochure that when people call and have these kind of problems, we can hand them and they can look at their options and learn about the technologies and get a list of providers that offer some of the different kinds of technologies and see what the income qualification thresholds are and sort of all of that in one little brochure. I think that education component, in my mind, is maybe the most important here to try to understand this disconnect and how we can close the gap and make sure everyone's aware of the programs that exist. There also maybe certainly be some fine-tuning in the programs themselves, in dollar amounts, and so I'm happy to talk more about that. But I'd like to see if we bring this back again at a future meeting, city staff's thoughts about how to get the word out and how to give people a concise explanation of their options when problems like this arise.
Diane?
Yeah, I'd like to see something that's available for everyone that just says if you have sewage backing up in your house, first thing you do is, number one, is it call the city hotline? We have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline, right? So it should be reported to the city, and then you can eliminate whether it's the city's problem or the individual's problem. And then number two would be to get it addressed. But if the city doesn't know about it, we can't do anything about it. And that would be your number one call to make. So if we can just have simply lay out, this is the steps you need to take when you have this problem, I think it would help a lot. Do we have a number for the hotline?
Bill?
Yep. Public Works number.
Public Works number.
After hours, and it goes to the city police desk, and they call somebody out. So
would it be a...
the number. 384-2342 is our Public Works number, 384-2342. Chief, I'm not sure what your number is.
2320.
384-2320 is after hours number. 384-2320 is after hours, after 5 o'clock.
So after 5 o'clock is 384-2320, and before 5 o'clock?
384-2342.
384-2342.
Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 5.
7:30 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Bill. My suggestion is, obviously, we're getting to close to 10 o'clock. I'm sure that some people want to be done discussing this. So since this is just a discussion item, this is my suggestion, is that Diane, everybody, send our suggestions of where to go from here to Bill and Brad, and we can have something back that we could maybe, there's a general consensus of how to get to the meat of the issue and how to solve those problems. And again, answer maybe any questions that the citizens don't feel got answered. They can address those to Public Works, and we can put that into the pool of discussion.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, the city reimbursement program, is it retroactive?
Prior to 2007, I don't believe so, is it?
We didn't have anything in place before 2007, so
Yeah.
it'd
After
have to
July
be after
1st,
July
2008.
1st, 2008.
Yeah.
July 1st, 2008 or after.
Anything before that? No.
We didn't have anything on the books.
Oh, okay. Can't make an exception. Next.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming and enduring this discussion, and we'll have more for you, I'm sure, in a couple weeks. Next, we have discussion on the Legacy Tree Program. And my badge of honor of having the shortest meetings is officially over. Darn it. Oh my goodness. Whew.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really happy to be here to present some possible directions for celebrating and recognizing Urbana's tree resources with the city arborist, Mike Brunk. I'm Aditi Kambuch. I'm the planner one at the city of Urbana.
If you could take your discussion outside, we've got a lengthy agenda left to take care of, so we can hear other people's presentations. If you could take any discussion outside, that would be greatly appreciated. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'd like to start with a really short story of the Bur Oak at Long's Garage at the crossing of Main Street and Maple, just northeast of the city building here. This Long's Garage was slated for expansion in 1979 when the city found out that this really exceptional tree was on the property, and we worked with the owner to preserve it. They built around it, and there's a plaque there that celebrates it. The reason I'm talking about this example is that it's meant to serve as it's indicative of what we're trying to do here, sort of work with the community and create a program that will enhance public awareness of our exceptional tree resources and also fulfill certain council goals that were discussed, including recording and marking our significant trees and providing notice when such a tree is to be removed. And this really leads to 3 goals that we identified. But let me backtrack a little bit in that over the past years, CD staff, along with Arbor and Legal, have looked at several different options, and we identified 3 directions with varying degrees of control and what potential outcomes for each of those programs. And we presented these to the Tree Commission on January 16th this year, and they recommended option 2, which was the public participation, advisory public input program, which was also the recommended staff option. And what we're asking the Committee of the Whole to do today is to give us feedback about the specific direction we want to move forward in with regard to this program, so city staff can create an ordinance and a thorough program to come back for adoption. And we thought it would be quite fitting that such a program is adopted on Arbor Day on April 26th this year. So the 3 program goals we identified were to recognize and celebrate our oldest and most sort of unique trees, enhance public awareness about these trees in our community, and promote development that's sensitive to these tree assets. I wanted to sort of explain what we mean by tree protection, and this is a definition by the International Society for Arboriculture, and they really sort of talk about the critical root zone, which is either the drip line of the tree or the furthest extent of the canopy, or 1 foot radially for every diameter inch of the tree at 54 inches from ground level. What this means is that if you have an old tree of 75 inches in diameter, and as a point of reference, the bur oak was 50.8 inches in diameter, so that's the age, and it's about 200 years old. We're talking about 75 feet would be the tree protection area. Ideally, that should be the area that's saved around the tree. And the reason this is important is that it sort of informs the basic assumption of this program, whether it should be a mandatory program or a voluntary program. That is, do residents participate out of their own consent, or does the city regulate and sort of mandate which trees should be protected? Because in several of our residential and business zoning districts, 60 foot is the minimum lot width. So if you have a tree protection area that easily can be 60 feet for an old tree, you're basically taking away a lot of the development potential for those lots. And we actually have case studies where the city tried to sort of protect all trees of a certain class and species, and that was really complicated to uphold in court, and it was struck down. So really quick 3-sentence overview of what we do right now for our public trees. So everything we're talking about right now are for public trees, that is trees on city property, as well as trees on private property. So we have existing programs that protect to a reasonable degree city trees, which include the planned review stage. So if there are any city trees that may be damaged, they're protected, and the developer works with the city arborist. Any resident wanting to prune a city tree requires a tree permit, and any violation requires a compensation as per the ISA, that is the International Society of Arboriculture guidelines. And our zoning ordinance has various requirements for parking areas and screening and buffering. Other cities, many cities around in our region, including Bloomington Normal, Champaign, and West Lafayette, do not have any only city trees are protected, no private tree protection program. There are certain cities that have voluntary programs with a split focus on public awareness and preservation, and these include Seattle and Portland. And then there are cities that have mandatory programs, and these are typically cities that have seen a lot of expansion and loss of tree canopy very rapidly, and so they're looking to protect all species over a certain width of diameter are protected. And quite a few of them in this area are around the Chicago and Chicago suburb areas. We wanted to ground what we were trying to do in Urbana's context, and 3 factors emerged. One was that we really value public participation in public education. We have a relatively stable development rate. We see 2 or 3 potentially legacy trees being removed each year, and plenty of our policies sort of focus on promoting infill development. And at this point, I want to say that we decided to call it a legacy. We had quite a bit of discussion about what to call this program, and legacy sort of implies saving something for future generations, and so that was the name we sort of came on. So we identified 3 options, having potentially different outcomes in terms of preservation and participation of private property owners. All of them share certain characteristics, including all of them require the designation needs to be consented by the private property owner. City will provide certain incentives or benefits to people who decide to participate. Any Urbana resident can nominate a tree for designation to be evaluated by the tree commission and the city arborist. A dead, dying, or unhealthy tree, or a tree that's deemed to be a nuisance at a certain point, as verified by a certified arborist, can be removed without any mitigation fee or replacement fee or permit. So those are the characteristics that are shared. I'll quickly go through 3 options. The first is focused on participation and public awareness. It's the honorary and educational program. Any resident can nominate a tree. The tree is evaluated by the tree commission. There's no, and could be potentially designated. There's no legal protection afforded to the tree, which means that at any point in the future, if the resident wants to take the tree down for some reason, he or she is free to do that. We see the benefits of this as being the maximum possible participation. It's the least burdensome on private property owners. It avoids putting the city in a position to subjectively evaluate the value of different trees for Urbana's residents. And it can be a purely administrative program, does not need to be an ordinance. The drawbacks are that there is no public involvement or monitoring when these trees are removed. Residents and neighbors can get invested in a tree when it's designated and celebrated, and then it can be taken down and can sort of disappoint them. And so there's a low preservation value. The second option is the advisory public input option, where any resident can nominate, the tree is evaluated, there has to be, the private property owner has to consent. The designation is recorded at the county recorder's office, so future owners are aware that there is a designated tree on their property. Removal requires noticing to the neighbors, and we could potentially use the same metric as we use for our other noticing, about 300 feet. And an advisory public hearing with the tree commission. This hearing is not, the outcome of it is not mandatory on the private property owner. They're free to do what they please with the tree at the end. However, if they do decide to remove the tree, we are asking them to contribute a certain amount, capped at a reasonable amount, and charged on the diameter of the tree to a tree fund, which will be used to plant trees in that area to sort of maintain the tree canopy of that area. The benefits of this we see are that it balances preservation with public awareness. It's unburdensome for the owner in that they can do what they want with their property at the end. Public input, so neighbors have a chance to come and talk about the tree if they're concerned or sort of would like to talk about it. The city is not put in the position to evaluate different trees and different properties. And city resources are really focused on public awareness and sort of celebrating the tree rather than enforcing and making sure that all trees are sort of protected. And the drawbacks are that the outcomes are not fully predictable. The public protection program, we're thinking about the designation is recorded, like the second option. However, if the property owner wants to remove a tree, it requires noticing, and the tree commission has to grant a permit to remove that tree. They may deny it, in which case it can be appealed. If there is a violation and the owner decides to remove the tree anyway, there's a much higher penalty, and that is as per the ISA evaluation guide for trees, which is much higher. And there's no cap to what that amount might be, as there is an option 2. And the benefits of this is that it's predictable, that we know that most of those trees will be protected because the penalty is much higher. And public the sort of the discussion of the permitting process can balance various city priorities. We anticipate a low participation rate in such a program because we do need owner consent at designation stage. And it requires city enforcement, and the city is placed in a position to sort of judge various trees. So I'm not going to go through this because it sort of covers most of the points I've made. So just to describe the designation process, any resident can nominate it. The city arborist informs the owner of the nomination, seeks their consent to designation, and provides them information on the program. The tree commission, the city arborist, then evaluate the tree. There are specific criteria on the basis of which a tree is evaluated, and we get to that at the end. If the tree does meet those criteria, there's a commemoration ceremony, and certain benefits that the city provides can be sort of implemented. And if in the future the resident wants to remove the tree, the procedure will vary depending on the option we select. Designation criteria include 9 possibilities. Any one of these can sort of contribute towards a tree being designated. It can be a notable tree as per the Urbana public tree inventory that is being conducted at the moment. It could be the size of the tree, the rarity of the tree, a historic or notable event that may have happened around the tree, the age, special ecological value, location, aesthetics, or any tree that is recognized in the Illinois Big Tree Register or National Register of Big Trees. And these are all examples from Urbana-Champaign, so of each of these categories. Oh, sorry, Urbana. Some of the participation benefits that we identified, sort of preliminary benefits, and we see these as sort of subject to change every year depending on city resources, is that trees would be a part of a walking tour. They would go in a database where residents can find out more about the ecology of the tree, etc. Residents would be given, the private property owner would be given a certificate of recognition. They can also speak with the tree arborist for advice on how to maintain their tree. There would be a plaque with information on the tree species and perhaps some sort of why is it significant in the public right-of-way so that residents who are walking by are aware of the resource in their neighborhood. The city would provide mulch from the Landscape Recycling Center up to 5 cubic yards for the first year. And if we choose option 3, which is a public protection option, there could be sort of, we can explore ways in which we can allow reduced parking under the drip line of the tree to protect the tree. We identified 3 preliminary sources of funding. One was a nomination donation. So when somebody nominates a tree, they can donate $15 or $20 or how much ever they would like into the program, which would go towards maintaining the program, paying for the plaques, etc. Fundraising, maybe sort of promotional material with pictures of our trees or similar ideas. And then if we choose option 2 or 3, there is a mitigation contribution that would go into the tree fund for planting trees around that area. I have the example of a nomination form, so any resident can nominate a tree using this form. It will be available on the city's website or can print out at the city's office. Sorry, should I keep that on the screen? Okay. There's an evaluation form, which each tree commissioner will evaluate the tree using this form, and a majority vote would be required to designate a tree. It includes categories for health and condition, location value, and risk assessments. If a tree is of poor health, it would likely not be designated. And I'd like to end with a picture of the ginkgo tree at McCullough and Elm. This is a tree that the neighborhood sort of came out and spoke in support of, and the developer built around it, and it's a really glorious specimen, and it worked, and it's still standing there. Our next steps are to get feedback from the committee and the council to sort of which program do you think is the most appropriate for Urbana, so we can start to develop a detailed program. So I'm happy to answer any questions with Mike and Bruce.
3 quick ones here, and I hope my tree lives long enough to get nominated. On page 4, option 2, the second 2 bullet points in the very first section, just explain a little bit more. Removing a healthy designated legacy tree would require mitigation by contributing a reasonable replacement fee to the city street tree fund. Does that apply to city trees or to private property? A tree's been designated.
Private property.
So they would
yes.
be asked to make a donation to the city tree program.
So that we're hoping to use that money towards planting trees and city property in that area to maintain sort of the tree canopy in that area. And the reason we chose the idea of it being contributed to the city tree fund is that there's more control over the maintenance of those trees, and we're ensured that they're taken care of to the best of their.
Yeah, and the idea is to maintain the canopy in that particular neighborhood. If a tree was preferred to be removed by that homeowner, that then they would donate to a tree planting fund that would go toward the canopy of that neighborhood. Now, if the tree was hazardous or unrepairable, if another professional arborist came in and said, the tree really needs to be removed, there's no requirement for a contribution.
Okay. Do we have any dollar numbers in mind yet, or just?
We were looking at $100 per diameter inch, capped at about $1,000.
Okay.
So it would match the fines, if you will, that we have on book.
Okay.
Now,
And then,
tree values, when we look at tree values for replacing city trees, when trees are damaged, tree values are more in the lines of can be upwards of $8,000 to $9,000 for large
yeah, okay,
trees.
so that feeds right into my next question, which is how do, okay, I know we're doing the city tree inventory and such, but we're not doing trees on private property. Would these trees on any, I assume any designated tree would get included in the city inventory then?
Yes,
and
that's
tracked?
the plan.
Yeah,
That
okay.
is the plan.
Okay, and then you talk about low-cost incentives for owners of legacy trees. What exactly do you have in mind there?
And these can be subject to change depending on the resources the city has. There are some cities that provide more intensive incentives and some less. So.
You'll back up one slide. Okay, I've got to admit a bias here. The weeping cherry on Kohler is in front of my house, so that's the tree I would nominate myself for aesthetics. Under aesthetics, yeah.
Well,
So
that
I have a little bit of a bias here.
That photo, Charlie, and I told you this, was found on the World Wide Web.
Nice.
So,
That's my tree, and it might be my picture too. It's a weeping willow style cherry tree. It's really neat.
I had Eric, Brandon, Diane, and Dennis. That's kind of the order of how I saw hands go.
So suppose I have a legacy tree on my property. Let's say it's a great big oak. And there are branches that are overhanging my house that might come down in a storm. In fact, maybe the whole tree might come down in a storm, even if it's healthy. I guess that I don't plan to take down any trees that are on my property. We did lose a very, very large maple from our parkway in a storm, and fortunately it was not quite as large as it might have been, so it only clipped a corner of our house. But I guess I'm a little bit concerned about. I don't think you can say. I mean, there are some trees that are obviously hazardous. They're rotted out, and the trunk has gotten hollow, and so forth. But there's no tree that's completely not hazardous. So I'm a little bit queasy about a program that would that would severely penalize property owners for removing large trees from the immediate vicinity of their home.
Brandon?
Could that just be one of the exceptions that staff are allowed to consider? You know, when staff make the consideration of is the tree healthy or not, or is there a reason to remove it or not, maybe if, life and safety and property is one of those considerations, so that if a tree does have a lot of big limbs overhanging a structure.
I mean, there is now it's not over my house, but our neighbor to the south has this magnificent oak. I don't know how many 100 years old it is, but it has so much overhang over that house that if it were over my house, I'm not sure how I would feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
In the risk assessment we have on the screen, we do have something called target area, and that the occasional use, intermittent use, frequent use, and constant use implies the use of the property under the tree. So if it was over a park bench, for instance, that is considered a risky location versus a tree in a park with no bench in it, or over, so that does give us some metric for evaluating that.
Sorry, Dennis.
While that is a thoughtful thought, I would hope that we would not draft an ordinance ultimately that, because of one possible instance, would eliminate an entire category of nomination.
The other alternative we can think about is that if in case of a natural, like a storm, for instance, that creates damage, the mitigation fee will be waived, as in all our your standard fee structures would apply in that if there's economic hardship or similar, we would be more sort of. The idea is not to push people away from the program, but try and include as many people as possible and make people think twice before removing a tree that may be a sort of a legacy status.
As well as trying to create a commitment to saving that tree as a legacy for the community. So it's a balancing act, and we go from option 1, which is very educational and little control, to option 3, which is a highly controlled program by the city.
I had Diane and then Mayor Pressing.
So how, if a person had to remove a legacy tree, for example, well, what if it's growing into their sewer system? How are they forced to pay the mitigation contribution?
That's a detail we'll have to work out with legal, but it is a situation that other communities have done. In fact, in northern Illinois, there are many communities that have a preservation program where every tree over a certain size is controlled by the city on private property, and if those trees are removed, they have to have a construction plan when they develop the area, and they reimburse the community a certain dollar figure, I think it's per diameter inch, for those trees that they remove for construction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not going that far. This is more of a designation. So.
Okay. Okay. And then one other question is, what input did you get, for example, from the building community or the development community? It seems like this would have a direct impact on some of the things that they plan. So what outreach have you done to that?
I can't say that we've done any outreach to the developers of the community because the way we approach that with this program is this is a volunteer program. And it's a program that is only, a tree is only nominated with the consent of the property owner. So if a developer owns the property and there's a legacy tree, potential legacy tree on their property that they want to develop that somebody else nominates, that developer has to give us consent before we even consider it to be a legacy tree.
That's a good point. Okay.
Mayor Pressing, and then Dennis had some more questions.
Yeah, I was
Sorry.
going to bring up the fact that we just talked about roots clogging sewers for an hour or so. So, I mean, do we have any regulations on where a sewer can be located if there, or where a tree can be planted
Well,
relative to a sewer?
Sure, that's a very good question. And our picture back where we show the root system of trees makes this problem so difficult because you can take a tree down that's adjacent to this sanitary system that has breaches in the line and have your neighbor's tree or the neighbor's tree invade that line. So, I mean, tree roots on this 36-inch oak here, it's got a 36-inch diameter, can extend, you know, as far as 100 and some odd feet beyond that tree. So for us to try to protect the root system, and not only that, 60% of the absorbing roots are outside the drip line. So it's very difficult for the city to go and try to protect these trees when they have such vast root systems. So how do we do that? We think the best approach is education and awareness. So there are two examples at the beginning of this program, one Long's Garage and the other was the apartments on McCullough, was the citizens spoke up and said, and the city worked out with the property owners, hey, these are important trees to the community. What can you do to work around these trees? And the city and the citizens and the developer of those areas then work together and save that tree. That's what we're trying, that's the essence of this program, is awareness. And that, in its sense, will create the preservation of the trees. How can we place sanitary lines? It's, you know, to answer that question, in my mind, it's more what kind of sanitary lines can we put in there that don't cause those problems, more than placement.
Dennis?
Okay, I realize this is just a discussion, and I'm very, very pleased to see the energy of your work to bring forward ultimately to us after I think I waited 6 years for this opportunity to talk about legacy trees. I have a couple questions and suggestions, and I guess that some of them I'd like to just make a comment on, and we don't have to like debate them right now. But I would hope that the city council would be strong enough of support of preserving the really beautiful trees in our community to think about maybe welding or merging option 2 and 3 together, to be just a little bit more proactive in taking responsibility to really establish a great list of legacy trees, still being compliant and resourceful and thoughtful of private property rights. And I think that we really in this community we really do need a way of not only vetting the nomination so that people have a chance to comment and perhaps support by their comments the nominations, which should then also perhaps help have some input in the judgment made by the tree commission, because the tree commission is going to be, these are the professional tree trimmers, or are they? Are they going to be, how proactive will the individuals as a whole, or the group as a whole of the tree commission be proactively hoping to preserve as many trees as possible? For them, it's going to be a difficult balance. Also, if any tree that's nominated, it's time to trim them out or to remove them. And I'm talking also about the public right-of-way, that, let me say, the arborist decides that 7 trees this year have to be taken down for whatever reasons. There's always a lot of concern in the public about the removal of large trees, and that's true. Now, the arborist always has reasons for removal. Sometimes the people just don't think that the time has yet come. And so there's been discussions about, after the tree is cut down, the base of the tree looks totally healthy, and they don't understand if one branch is weak. So there needs to be a vetting process so people at least have an opportunity to express their needs. Then, common sense has to prevail. I went out and I measured some of the trees in my neighborhood, because I don't want the conditions for nominating them to be so rigid that they preclude possible nominations. And although I see that there's many kinds of classifications for being considered, one of them was the girth of the tree, the circumference of the tree. Now, some of the cities will allow a nomination of a girth of 20 inches. But we're talking about 48 inches. That's 4 feet. So I decided to do a visual experiment. And I made a tree. I've designed a cross-section of a tree that's 48 inches wide. And it is this large. So I'm thinking, how many trees would qualify if this was the required limitation for the girth of the tree? And I measured the Long's garage tree, and it exceeds this. But its sister tree, which is in the Matheny's front yard, doesn't meet these qualifications, and yet it is a gigantic oak tree. So I don't think that we can live with this as a diameter for accepting as a guide for tree size.
Understand, that's not a limit.
It's not a limit.
No, it's not a limit.
It's only.
It's just one category.
It's
It's
just
one
one
category,
category. We
but
have
it
no-
might be. But I think that we should try to we should try to have nominated as many trees as is feasible. And yes, that's a great category, but people may think that they have to meet that to actually seriously think about whether they would be accepted. And if you had a tree that was only 36 inches wide, it would still be a huge tree. So the tree, the giant oak tree in Sarah Matheny's, she has 2 giant oak trees, and neither of them would qualify if that was the limitation that you expected to use as a approval. And your average parkway tree that's large is about 9 foot around. Matheny's tree was 10 foot around. Long's garage was 17 foot wide, so it exceeded the.
On that comment, realize that when we do our inventory, and 48 inches is not a hard number. When we do our inventory, the idea was to select trees that are in the top 1% of the size class of our inventory. We don't really know what that number is. That 48-inch number was thrown out there as a starting point.
Okay, well, if it's a starting point, I'm debating
but sure.
where to start.
Well, and once we get our inventory, I don't know that we have any 48-inch street trees, so that number could go down. But I don't think it's a hard and fast rule.
Well, I know there are bur oaks that probably meet that requirement.
We have to pick something, you know, and I guess the decision will be made how the program grows. But, you know, we'll have 10 trees this year, maybe 110 years, maybe 1,000 down the road. We don't know how expansive this program could be.
Right.
But I think it's going to be a wonderful program that'll evolve
Yeah,
over time.
all the seeds are there to have great success, and of course we don't have anything right now in the books, and this is really going to help assist us in the Tree City program. I mean, this is going to be exemplary. You know, I think the educational part's really important. I think people, I really would love to see trees nominated on private property. And there's one tree that the city has already voiced an opinion about, which doesn't sound like it's going to be protected by this ordinance if it passes as it's written. And this is the oak tree that is next to Leal Park, but it's on private property, which the city recently gave money to the developer to demolish an existing home or two. But we have no guarantee that, and one of the conditions of clearing, we were concerned that the lot would be clear cut, and on it is this huge oak tree, which the city council voiced its opinion that needs to be preserved. Now, it looks like if our compliance to the tree program is that it's totally voluntary, there's no reason we don't seem to have a footing to have a real discussion with the property owner ultimately to save this tree, because he'll say, well, it needs to be a parking lot there, and we're going to lose it. And I would say that if the city has assisted the property owner in any way financially, that he would have to bring a really good reason to remove a tree that has been designated. And that maybe the designated should not in every respect or in every instance remain voluntary on the part of the developer, because maybe many developers would like to just basically remove all vegetation from any property that they own. And is that really serving the community the best? So I would like to have a discussion about identifying really important trees like the ginkgo tree, which through the development process you were able to convince the developer to preserve. And on that property, besides having a historic home that was removed, there was actually so many different trees of value that it was considered almost like a mini arboretum. But the community only saved one tree, and they had a fight for it. So is there a way of encouraging development thoughtfully to preserve the important tree and still allow the guy to have a great development around it? Mm-hmm. And not just say, well, my development has to be in the middle, and that tree is unfortunately right where the garage is going to be. So these are the kinds of considerations that I would love to have. And I think once we get the ordinance, we need to then allow the community to come in and comment on it. So I hope that we can do this good work in time for your hope for dedication on Arbor Day. I think we can. But there also needs to be a time for the community to come in and say, yeah, this is really important, and these three issues really bother us still, and can you refine them? Or, maybe we're going to hear, some concerns from the developers too, and we have to reach some kind of nice balance. But so far, so good, I think.
So I don't usually disagree with Dennis, but I have a different reaction to this. And I'll just start out by saying I haven't counted the trees on my property, but it's order of magnitude 20. And we've lived there since 1971. I've never removed a tree. We've lost a few trees. We lost a white birch because it's out of its climate. We lost a maple because an enormous maple because it got hollowed out. The trunk got hollowed out and it came down in a storm. We've lost a couple of other trees to disease, but and I've mourned every one of them. But if you adopt option 2 or option 3, I will not agree to a legacy designation on any of the trees that are on my property.
And let us know why.
Oh, well, option 2 maybe, but just because I think that I could imagine a situation where I would make a judgment that there was a safety issue and the city might disagree with me.
So the contribution, the mitigation fee for removal, is that your concern?
Yeah, it's pretty coercive, and in option 3, it's almost punitive. And I mean, look, I could pay your $1,000 or whatever, but some people that would really hurt, and they might have enormous old trees on their property.
Now, you realize that this is only for property owners that are volunteering to participate in the program.
And sure, and that's what I'm saying. I would not volunteer. Yeah. I would not volunteer.
Yeah, there is.
And I think my gut feeling is that the participation, my gut feeling, you'd have to poll people. You'd have to, but my gut feeling is the participation would be very low. And I think that with option 1, I mean, the trees that you have talked about that you have saved, the giant ginkgo tree, the tree by Long's Garage, you saved those by, in a sense, a moral pressure, a pressure that this was the right thing to do for the community. And I think that you can go quite far with that. And I certainly would I'd love it if any of my trees were nice enough to be legacy trees, but I don't want to, I would not be comfortable with that in a coercive situation.
Thank you for that input.
Brandon?
Eric, would you be willing to nominate your trees under option 2 if the fee aspect of it were removed, but if there were still an advisory public input and public hearing, so that if a significant tree was going to come down, there was still notice to neighbors and people could come out and say, Abe Lincoln did give a speech at this tree, or or say this is a special kind of a tree, we only have 3 of these weeping cherry trees in all of the city of Urbana, and you at least had a chance to hear that information, but at the end of it you could make your decision without a fine. Would that version of option 2 be something that you would consider for your trees?
Yeah, that'd probably be okay.
Mayor Pressing?
Well, it seems to me that we should start with the option 1 and just try it for a while, because I think this is a question of just changing attitudes. It's a cultural thing, and I don't think you start with something real heavy-handed. And I think we should do it and put a sunset clause on it and reevaluate it after a few years. And we might want to strengthen it, but you can't do it without public support, and it's really education.
Dennis?
Yeah, I think education is really important. I think there's a lot of people here in the community that really do care about their trees, and I think that maybe the tree commission's suggestion of going with number 2 is probably the most sensible. If you start out really weak, people will never want to move higher. I don't think they ever will. I think that I think the resistance is going to be really difficult to overcome, and maybe there's going to be resistance anyways. But I think you should play your hand the way your heart is, and not go for the lowest common denominator.
Diane?
Well, I need to think about this some more, but my first reaction is I could live with number 2, but I'm with Eric without the required mitigation contribution. I think that's just that just won't go over well. But the basic premise of the rest of it seems like a reasonable place to start.
One of the other ideas we had within option 2 was that if a tree was going to be, if there was to be a mitigation of some sort, it could be open to the whole community if they wanted to contribute. If a tree was being taken down, so it's not, the burden is not only on the person who owns the tree, but anybody in the city who may want to contribute to replacing a tree on city property in lieu of this tree being removed. So, and it's open, it's voluntary. It doesn't sort of put a burden on anyone. So that's one option we had.
Charlie?
Yeah, option 2 light. I was going to suggest that that one of the ways to look at would be to start working with city attorney on figuring out some of the logistics of it. One thing that Dennis said that I thought was interesting is where the city gets involved in providing economic incentives to have a little bit more say in something like that, because this whole thing did come about from looking at the oak trees at University and Ray Street. So trying to figure, that's our starting point. So having something that sort of protects those trees might be appropriate. But anyway, a light version of option 2, I think would satisfy, I think, the mayor, Eric, particularly if you could include something that when a tree does become dangerous, maybe it grows too big, it's up against a house, and something like that, so that there is an appropriate scaling that allows a tree to be trimmed significantly or removed if necessary when it poses a significant, even a potential hazard. So anyway, that's
Thank
my
you.
suggestion.
Mm-hmm. We have the city attorney.
Let me chime in, having just come from 2 communities that have the preservation format, one of which is listed on your presentation as Highland Park, the other being Deerfield. The minimum fee that we experienced was $2,500 to remove any tree, period. The citizens greatly, it was passed by their respective city governments, citizens greatly disapproved. To show you how onerous such a program could be, we had the occasion to design and build a house in Highland Park. And we happened to have had one of the largest trees in the entire city of Highland Park, a huge, huge oak tree right smack dab in the middle of the lot. The house on city order had to be redesigned to the tune of about $35,000 before we could build it to accommodate not only the tree, not only the drip line, but also the very expansive root structure. And the problem with the tree is it was on the west side of the house, and if it ever came down, they figured it was about a 230-year-old tree. If it ever came down, it would have taken out the whole house. So my suggestion from somebody who has been in that area and with a little legal experience, make sure you really consider fines or forced contributions and that kind of highly structured program.
Thank you.
Well, my 2 cents is option 1, if we do anything. I kind of see it like historic preservation, and almost 8 years in, I think people know where I stand on that, and I just, when it comes to property owners, I think they should have the right to what is done with their homes, what is done with their trees, and if it's not in the city right away, I don't think that the city should have any say at all. And that's my opinion, and that's all it is, my opinion. So, Eric?
Heather, this is a historic night. In the first place, you've presided over a meeting that's going to go 4 hours. And in the second place, I find myself agreeing more with you than with Dennis.
Yeah, it is very historic, Eric. All right. Robert?
I am listening. I didn't fall asleep. But I think option 2 with some variable changes would be palatable. But on the other hand, I think starting small initially will allow you to grow. And also not, what it allows you to do is look at the lay of the land, the reality of the lay of the land, and find out the receptiveness of the people that you plan to serve with this. And I think most theoretical programs, or if you want to think of them that way, you want to move into them, but if you move into them very quickly with a lot of expectations, you have to do a lot of backtracking sometimes, and oftentimes it's better to start small, find out what the lay of the land is, and then expand your systems such that accommodates the attitude of the people. And I think that would probably be just a good advice.
Thank you.
Brandon?
So I wonder if a motion to ask staff to work on this and bring it back again would be in order. I guess I'd be prepared to make a motion to ask staff to work up a version of option 2 that doesn't have the punitive fine aspect, that really focuses on the educational, and then bring that back to committee and we can continue from there.
Second. There's been a motion by Brandon and a second from Diane. Is there any further discussion? Dennis?
Yeah, sorry. You know, we if you want to think about historic preservation in terms of homes and houses, we've seen that we wouldn't have any historic houses landmarked in Urbana if it weren't for the due diligence of about 2 people. And do you think then that there's no historic home in Urbana that ought to be preserved? I think it shows that, I think the reality is that there's many things that ought to be preserved for many reasons, aesthetically, architecturally, community, culturally, value, but there are a lot of lazy people. We wouldn't probably have hardly any buildings left in the downtown of that are older than they date from the 1880s, if it wasn't just by chance. Because we ourselves have torn down an entire row of business fronts to put a parking garage in, and we've got modern monoliths on Main Street. This community only has a block and a half of historic buildings, and even those blocks are not truly purely preserved. So if we've had to if those 2 people or 3 people didn't come forward and do anything at all, I'd like to point out that there's not a single person in our Historic Preservation Commission who's preserved anything. So where does that leave our wonderful trees? They're even less valued. But should they be? Tree City USA founding member. Who's gonna love our trees? Certainly our arborists must. The tree commission must. And certain individuals will nominate the trees either in their homes or in their neighbors' yards and have that conversation in the neighborhood about it. And we're going to get some people who say yes, and some people who live on Main Street will say no. But let's at least have the right to ask.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion again from Brandon, a second from Diane. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have ordinance number 2013-01-010, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance fiscal year 2012 through 13. I don't know who's bringing this to us. Are you bringing this to us, Robert?
Fire equipment grant?
Fire equipment.
Fire
Oh,
equipment.
is that-
Number 7 is fire.
Number 7. 2013-01-010.
It's just, we're getting almost $50,000 for equipment. I think we should take it.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
So I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
So it's been moved by Eric and seconded by Diane to send this to council with a recommendation for approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have ordinance number 2013-01-007, an ordinance approving a second amendment to the City of Urbana and Urbana Home Consortium Annual Action Plan fiscal year 2011 through 2012 and fiscal year 2012 through 2013. And we have Kelly and Bill.
Yes. Numbers 8, 9, and 10 are all sort of related.
So-
the first one, the ordinance for the annual action plan, approving an amendment. It is to revise the CDBG budget to put more funds into the Census Tract 53 street lighting project, which has been in our annual action plan for several years. It's amending the budget to reallocate property acquisition demolition funds into city infrastructure projects, specifically the Census Tract 53 street lighting, and also to rename a project called Neighborhood Sidewalks to specifically the Lenore Adams Fairlawn multi-use path. Also increasing funding with remaining program funds. And then on page 2 of the memo shows the layout for the proposed amendment for you. And so basically these changes will help with our timeliness with spending our funds. And there is no impact to the city budget because these funds have already been allocated.
Diane?
I move that we send ordinance number 2012-01-007, an ordinance approving a second amendment to the City of Urbana and Urbana Home Consortium Annual Action Plans, fiscal year 2011-12 and fiscal year 2012 and 2013.
Ordinance number 2013.
13.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do you want to take 13, 07, 08, and 09 in omnibus fashion?
So moved.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
And may I speak to that?
Okay.
I needed a visual aid to work my way through these 3 memos, so I created this visual aid that you have on your desk tonight. It's been vetted by Public Works and Community Development. So what we're doing in these next 3 motions is basically we are finding ways to fund 3 very important neighborhood projects, and those are in yellow on your paper. That's the Urbana Townhome demolition, the King Park area streetlights, and the Lenore Adams path. And in order to do that, we just need to reallocate funds from 3 different pots of money, that being the TIF 3 fund, the Capital Improvement Fund, and the CDBG funds. And so what I pulled from all of those wonderfully detailed memos was the amounts going from one place to the other, and magically they all add up to what we need to accomplish these projects and get them done in a timely manner, which will make a huge difference in each of these 3 neighborhoods.
All right, so we have a motion by Diane and a second by...
I'll give a second to you.
I did.
Did
Oh,
you?
okay.
Robert's right there.
Robert, is there any further discussion?
Just want to say.
Oh, and we're sending these to council with a recommendation for approval, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Dennis?
I totally support all these issues. All of them have value, and there's no point in trying to play one neighborhood need off against another as far as like finances go, because we can afford all of them just with a little bit of reallocation of funding. And as you've heard tonight from public input, people are really have come out and to support it. People we've never seen before in City Council have come forward to support these issues. So I hope that everybody will agree with me and pass them along.
All right, sounds good. So we have a motion and a second to see these at council with the recommendation for approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have ordinance number 2013-01006, an ordinance approving a First Amendment to an agreement for use of right-of-way with MCC Network Services, LLC, Goodwin Avenue between University Avenue and Stoughton Street. Charlie?
Move to send this to council with recommendation for approval.
Second.
It's pretty obvious they probably meant to go to Stoughton in the first place. Makes more sense.
So we have a motion by Charlie and a second by Robert. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have resolution number 2013-01001R, a resolution authorizing execution of a construction engineering service agreement for federal participation with Clark Dietz Incorporated, Champaign, Illinois, Main Street and Race Street, HSIP Signal Improvements.
And I promise I'll get you out of here before 11 o'clock. This item and the next item are both related. They're covered, both of them are covered in the memo that I provided. We've got the plans approved, and with IDOT, in order to spend grant money to pay for the construction engineering services, we need to have an agreement with Clark Dietz. And then the second item is a local agency agreement, which basically, with IDOT, which basically authorizes those expenditures. With the Clark Dietz agreement is for $23,300. 90% of that is grant funded, so our share is about $2,000 on that. Our total share, 10% on the whole signal project, is about $25,000, $26,000.
Charlie?
I move to send both of these to council with recommendation for approval.
Second.
It's been motioned by Charlie and seconded by Dennis. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Opposed? That motion carries. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.